Here we go.
Oh, yeah.
Welcome everyone to this workshop. And Katie, we've got.
So part of your school committee goals is to monitor student achievement data. And I know Sue's going to say this, but I think it really is important to say that you're seeing snapshots of data. Data doesn't tell the whole story of what's going on in schools, because when we look at the data, I want to recognize our staff, our teachers, our coaches, our ed techs are working at 110% to do the work they need to do to help our students achieve. So it does not tell the whole story. You're getting that small slice of all the work we do. What's the data look like in the fall? Sue will also be going over our MEA data as we work through that. So I just want the staff to know that sometimes it's hard because you're going to see school data and it doesn't tell the whole story. So I think you really need to recognize that you really have an outstanding staff working exceptionally hard to meet all of the demands that education and educators need to face in today's world. So with that, Sue?
Okay. We'll get started. So we are doing our fall data review tonight, and as Katie said, it is important to remember that assessments don't tell the whole story of what is happening in our schools. Test scores help us understand our students so we can improve academic achievement. And so tonight we're going to go over the fall screening results with you. We're going to look at district and school level results. And then we have Principal Kim Taylor and literacy coach Zoey Parody here tonight. And they're going to talk to you about how schools use the screening data and how that's helpful for students. And when they finish up, we'll get back into more data. We're going to look at the graduation rate and the MEA results. And then we'll talk about some challenges that we have and some bright spots in the data, and then some next steps for us. So the universal screening, we have talked about this before, but I just want to remind you that the universal screening is a brief assessment. We give this 3 times a year or more, and the primary purpose of our universal screening is to identify our at-risk students, and we use this for intervention planning and progress monitoring, and it also provides us with overall school achievement and growth data. And in Auburn, we use the STAR assessments for universal screening, and we use early literacy for kindergarten and first grade, and we use the reading and math for grades 1 through 8. And as I mentioned, it is a short assessment, it's computer adaptive, and it provides us with scaled scores, criterion reference scores, and its norm reference. So we can compare our students to other students at the same grade level across the nation. Also, I want to mention that we're looking at this data tonight. We're going to review this, but this process happens across the district at different levels. It happens in schools where teachers are looking at this, intervention teams are analyzing this, school improvement teams, and then at the district level, the administrators and the management team, and then the school committee. So we're all in this at different levels. And so let's take a look at how we're doing. This is the fall screening, and what you're seeing here is the STAR reading assessment results for the fall by grade level. And you can see overall, right now, K-8, we have 51% of our students proficient. And last year, this was 49%. So we're up a little bit there. And also a highlight here is kindergarten at 61%.
Which is a good sign.
So that is a good, yes, that is very good.
Preschool's helpful.
Yeah.
Preschool, exactly.
Yeah. And then here's a look at how we're doing it at each school. So you can see we are ranging from 43% at Washburn up to 60% at Fairview. And I'm going to move along so we can take a look at the math.
Do we have any more of these?
We do.
Thank you.
Here, pass it.
Thank you, Susan.
She has extra.
Have
Can we bring
extras?
some out?
Anybody?
Michelle, if you want to grab, if anybody in the.
Could you give me one more?
Yes. Extra.
I always give him copies of everything.
So here's the math results by grade level. And last year we were at 59%. This year we're at 59% overall. And again, you know, first grade up there at 71%. High of 71% there. And there's our math proficiency levels by school. So we are ranging from 43% at Washburn to 73% at East Auburn. And now we're going to kind of switch gears. And we're going to turn this over to Kim and Zoey, and they're going to talk to you about how they use this information in their school. Yeah, you do. So I'll keep this one.
I'll take this. Okay. So what we're hoping to do is paint you a little bit of picture of what it looks like in the school. So as Sue mentioned, we do analyze this data all the time. And so hopefully Zoey and I can give you just a little glimpse of what it looks like day to day in the school. I found this cartoon, which is just the best. So if your eyes aren't great, I'll read it for you. Before I write my name on the board, I'll need to know how you're planning to use this data. And so, you know, I think Katie mentioned it, Sue mentioned it. We collect lots of data. So we're showing you a little slice with the star, but everything we do, we collect data, and we use that, including actually writing names, right? So with our little ones, who can write their name, who doesn't know how to write their name, and what are we going to do? And the long and short of it is our data informs our instruction. We work really hard to make sure the data we collect is useful and that we're using it appropriately. And we're sharing on STAR, but we collect data on behaviors, and are those behaviors improving? Attendance, is the attendance improving? And so, you know, data tells us a story, and we want to make sure that we're telling the full story. So let's see. So at the school level, I want to kind of paint a picture or explain to you what the different groups that we have. So at the school level, we have an RTI team or an intervention team, and that's composed of all of our special ed teachers, including our special ed team leader, myself, the principal, Zoey Parody, the instructional coach, and all of our Title I staff. So every single week, that team gets together and reviews this data, and then we make adjustments to our instructional plans. We also have a coaching team, which is Zoey and myself, and a literacy coach in training. We meet weekly, and we look at data, and we adjust coaching. At the grade level, we have PLCs or learning teams, professional learning communities. They meet every week, so that's a grade level team, and then they dig into their data and work to improve instruction or change instruction. The classroom teacher uses the information for planning, and Zoanne's going to highlight some of that for you today, so you can see actually how we can use not only STAR as just for the raw data, but how we can dig a little bit, and it gives us some planning tools, and then of course to monitor progress just across the board, and Sue does a good job highlighting that. She talked a little bit about the windows. So we administer the STAR assessment at least 3 times a year, once in the fall, once in the winter, once in the spring. But then for our students who are not proficient, so our does not meet and partially meet kids, we assess them, progress monitor them in the middle of that as well, because we don't want to wait a whole another 12 weeks. We want to make sure we're assessing those kids that might be struggling and check and adjust. So these are different reports that you're going to see tonight that Zoanne's going to highlight. A screening report, so we can use it to screen kids to see what their needs are. We have growth reports to show if kids are making growth, and then if they're not making the growth we want, what do we do about that? Again, progress monitoring, and we monitor groups as a whole, and we monitor individual students. Instructional reporting, and then the STAR actually even has released items and some lesson plans that we utilize as well. So, Zoe,
I can see it from
you
there.
can see it from there?
Yeah, you do the buttons.
Okay.
So one of my charges is, after a universal screening, is to compile the data so that everybody can take a look at it. As Kim had said, that I take the data and we look at it as the intervention team and looking to see how children are progressing. What you're looking at is you're looking at a full year profile of one grade level, and it's color-coded, so it's really easy to manipulate. It's in Excel, and it's easy to see automatically how many children are exceeding, how many are partially meets, how many are meets. So if we look at number 26, I can tell you that's a Title I student, and at the beginning of the year, it is in yellow. The color is in yellow. And, see it?
Hey, I'm trying, it's a little tricky there. There we
There we
are.
go. It's in
Yep.
yellow, so I know automatically that child is partially meets. And Title I is in there for services, so I know automatically that child's being looked at and helped along the way. As the year progresses, as we like to see, the child is now in the green, the child is now meeting. So we can conclude or surmise that the child has made progress with the help of Title I. And then at the end of the year, there is blue, and that's where we celebrate that child is now exceeding through the screening. And at where she's now hovering over that 99, I believe,
Yep.
that is the adequate yearly growth. And our target, our benchmark for Auburn is 40. So hooray for this child. He's done quite well. Now I'm going to look at child number 19, who is now, sorry, my eyes, 19.
Here you are.
19, yep, there we go.
19, and
Another Title I student, yep.
number 19, and are you scanning? Yeah, okay.
Yep.
There we go. Number 19, and it's green, and it's getting Title I. So this child probably received services last year. We're continuing so that the child does not fall behind. And sure enough, that child has something where they have taken a blip, and now they're in the does not meet. That sends us flags at the intervention, and then we take a deeper look as to what's going on. We take a case study where we, like we said, the data is only one snapshot and one snapshot in time. So we're going to now dig in deeper, and we're going to say, why is this child having some difficulty? And from there, we dig into what's happening at the classroom, what's happening in intervention, and what's their social and emotional piece also. Sure enough, as we progress, we still hovered around and supported that child. The child has moved up to the partially meets. That child will continue the following year to be on our radar. So one of the things at each part is we compress the data so that we can then start looking at the grade levels. And in that, it gives us a snapshot as to maybe where do we need to put our resources, where do I need to maybe go in and do some support with the teachers in coaching, and also looking to make sure that we're moving forward on that. This is a typical, it's a screen.
Sorry, I have a question. Is this the same process that happens at each of the schools?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Should be very similar, and yes.
I just didn't know where, like Fairview, for instance, doesn't have the Title I. Is it the same process that we follow with that school as well?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Probably have different people on their team, but they would follow the same process.
So this is a screening after the fall, and this is a grade level again. This is a typical report that we would be looking at and the data that we'd be looking at in our professional learning teams at the grade level. And we'd be talking about what do we see, what do we notice, and who are they. And
Each bar represents a different student. This is last year because we wanted you to see a full range. I should mention that, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
So here we're looking, the color coding here is a little different, but it's still the same. The blue is children that are on watch. The yellow are our partially meet students, and then the red is students who have urgent needs, as it does not meet. And what we can see here is how many and what are we going to do to help support them.
Oops, sorry, I went ahead.
Yep, you did.
There we go.
So when you take these side by side, this would then be the winter benchmark. We now see automatically that the dark green has made growth, and that represents exceeds. So right away, we know that children are moving up. The lighter green is meets, and then notice the blue that we're on watch, the children that we may have made adjustments by having some tier 1 service, or tier 1, sorry, I'm using lingo. Tier 1 is in the classroom, and so the classroom teacher may have a small group that they pull aside and get another instructional piece for that particular child. And then the partially meets and the does not meet, you can see the partially meet has also decreased. And then the does not meet, remember there was 2 on the first slide, now there's 3. So now I have to look and see who is that child, and also who are those children and why haven't they moved? And what are the circumstances around it, and what we just start peeling away. Are they getting services? What type of services? What more services can we do and help support them?
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Do kids move in and out of the categories? Like, can those 3 be 3 different students?
Yes, what I'm going to do, what the team would do is they would cross-check. Each classroom teacher actually has a data wall, just like the one I have of the whole grade levels. Each classroom has their own data wall, and we would be able to see who is moving up or down, because you're right. Each child, it may not be the same child those red children may not be the same red children in the past, but we're having our eyes on them, and we're taking them carefully and seriously and giving them some instruction that they need.
You can also see the red bars are a little taller. So if you look, this is the group of students in the fall, and you can see the red bars, how far they are from the meeting benchmark, that line that's going across. So we have to keep in mind that some of these kids that are in the red, they're in like the 1st percentile. And to get to a meeting standard, they would have to be now at the 40th percentile, which is quite a lot of work. So you can see that 2 of these bars are, right? They're inching up. And then we have this one, and we look further into like why that student is there. It also could be a move-in.
True.
Could be a move-in.
We do have some move-ins that really...
Quite a few move-ins, yeah. Are you all set? You want the
Sure.
next one?
Another question. So if you have a child that is noted to be in the red section and it's a duplicate, so you know that it's the same child that's been on that same benchmark, are there certain things that you follow if that child is recognized as being red for several?
We take a look at the child and see what kind of services they have. So they may be a special ed student getting special ed services. They may be a Title I student getting Title I services. And typically what happens also is if a child is getting multiple services, such as a Title I student, over a period of time, then we have to make a decision at the intervention team as to where do we go next? What are our next steps? The classroom teacher may come to the table and we write up a plan that they're to try in the classroom or in special services, and then Title I to have a plan, and if it doesn't work, then we'll refer to special services.
That's why it's important on the intervention team that everyone's there. So special ed teachers are there, the Title I teachers are there, so that they can talk about what are the strategies working, not working, do we have to do further? And sometimes we need to do further assessment. Did they just not perform well on the test, and how are they doing in the classroom? So, yeah.
Can you speak to the communication with the parents when a child's in the red intervention? Just because I'm sure the home life has a lot to do with it, and extra work at home, or what is that like? How well informed are parents?
Well, classroom teachers are constantly having communication with parents as to how the children are doing. And typically, if it's a child that's having some difficulty and the teacher's reached out and we have services in place, we may take the next step where we go to a child study team. And that's where we bring all the adults in this child's life around the table, and we start talking about the children's progress and what's happening and what would be the best recommendations for everybody at the table for this child. And we make some serious decisions about where to go next, so that it's not only the classroom teacher and the school making the decisions, but the parents come also to the table.
Okay, good.
You have 2 more.
Okay. Oh, 2 more, thanks. So here's another report for the instructional groupings. Remember when I said the classroom teacher is taking a look at their data? This is where the classroom teacher at Tier 1 can start grouping children and looking more closely as to what kind of skills or strategies that they need extra support in. It's not just only for children who are having difficulty, but also the dark green are sometimes our gifted and talented students. So the classroom teacher has the ability to group them together. And in the next slide after that, we will move us along. This is a report. When we have that grouping of students, this report will then tell us exactly what kind of skills and focuses that we have to have for that set of children grouped together. And so this is really very helpful for the classroom teacher when they're trying to not only teach and help students on all over, but really helping and hitting the gifted and talented students' needs also, because sometimes it's a little bit difficult to always keep them challenged.
And just keeping in mind that this is one piece of the puzzle, we would never, recommend to a staff member that they only teach these, but it does give them some guidance to try to fill in some gaps or some holes.
It's also nice because it also gives the Title I and other people who are giving services so that we have some common language and some common focuses for the child, so that we're not teaching different things and the child is getting multiple messages.
I have another question, sorry.
Sure, no.
So
Why we're here.
when you're looking at the graphs of the kids for the year, did you mention that they can look back at the previous year to see how the child is doing?
I have a historical data walls, yes, and that's where I keep track from year to year as to how the child is doing.
I'm just wondering about kids that, bounce back and forth. Are we looking at, how that affects if the kid goes, get services and then they do better and then they fall behind? Like, are we keeping track of that as they move along in grades so that can be caught?
Yes, we do. I'm going to give you an example. If a child gets a service such as reading recovery the first year, our focus is even depending upon how well they do, they may graduate from the program, we still keep our eye and some kind of service support for the next 3 years. Okay. And that may not be 5 times a week. It just might be the reading recovery teacher coming in and checking in and listening to the child read once a week, twice a week, and making sure that that child is still succeeding. We'd like to do that for all of our Title I students who eventually leave. It just depends sometimes on how much resource we have.
It is a resources game, and so, ideally, we would be able to support kids long-term, especially when they're really fragile. Reading recovery is a perfect example because it's a first-grade intervention that we provide for our most struggling learners, and what we have to do is then, when they, at the end of their 20 weeks, we have to then take that group of kids and say, okay, which kids are going to be supported in Tier 1, just by their classroom teachers, which ones are going to have Tier 1 plus a small group to help, solidify those skills and maintain those skills that they just gained over this 20-week period. But it is a resources game. We have to take the resources we have and distribute it as equitably as we possibly can. And so, there is sometimes that we have some kids that are pretty secure, right? And then they slip behind. And when we talk about the summer slide, which I think Sue has some slides later that's going to highlight that, that is a real struggle that we have is, the summer slide or kids falling behind. Yeah.
Go ahead.
So when you say that you have to share or split the resources the best that you can between the kids, what do you think would help the most to get for resources? I mean, is it extra teacher support? Is it extra coaches? Is it classroom size? Like, just to hear from you, what would be most beneficial to help?
So
Small class sizes.
Small class sizes, absolutely, number one, can't argue with that ever. And interventionists, and coaches. So the thing that is so essential about a instructional coach, a literacy coach, math coach, whatever kind of coach you have, is that they support tier one. So they are the ones that go into the classroom and make sure that that first level of instruction is going to be strong. They're building that foundation. And then the next level is our interventionists. So they're taking those kids that are having a little bit of a struggle, and they're layering that. And they're in our school, and I think in most schools, those groups never go beyond 4 kids, because the research says that if you have 7 kids in an intervention group, it's really not giving them the one-to-one that they need. So, if you were to ask me, I would always say small classroom sizes. I know in my building, interventionists, because we meet every week as an intervention group or RTI group, and our constant struggle is, okay, so I know so-and-so could use another layer of service. Who's going to do that? And then what does that mean to other kids? So we do shuffle, kids, and then we monitor them very closely, but it is a game of resources.
So at Fairview, there's no Title I.
Mm-hmm.
So is this a game of resources minus Title I at Fairview?
I can't really speak to Fairview. I think each school uses their resources differently. So for example, when I was a classroom teacher, I know the team that I worked in, there was a team of us, and we provided interventions among our team. So what we did is we had this is just one way that we did it. We had a dedicated block where one of the teachers took more students. That teacher was very capable of taking a big group of kids. Then the other teacher took a big group of kids, and I provided interventions, small group interventions, to the other kids. So I think there's a lot of creative ways that people have to do it. Would I say that everyone could use interventionists in their room? Absolutely. In their school, I think anyone could say that. And the thing about interventionists, they've had a lot of training in working with kids who have learning struggles.
So when you went back, and I don't want you to go back, but you picked out 2 students that were Title I students.
Correct.
Okay, so at Fairview, those would not be Title I students. So what kind of resources do they have on it, and how are they tracked or scored or
I'm going to
whatever?
give you the little bit of knowledge that I have.
Okay.
And just through conversations with Pam we met, who's at Fairview, is that they have grade level teams where they do monitor their students just as we do. And their philosophy is absolutely the same, but it's probably, they don't have a Title I student, but they'll have a designated teacher who will then come in and do some work with students. Now, how they configure that, it may look different from grade level to grade level, so that's why I'm saying it cautiously. But they do.
That is on, they were here, but they do learning teams just the same, and they take their data They know the students that are struggling, the students that need support, students that are achieving, and then they group and regroup. So they do the same thing. They have identified which students will have which strategies, either small group, who's going to be instructing, and then they check on that the following week. So when Sue does her analysis of who needs intervention, she puts Fairview in the same grouping as the other schools. And you remember, the reason you added an interventionist to Sherwood Heights, I think 2 years ago? So 2 years
Yes,
ago?
yeah.
Yeah, 2 years ago is because they had the strongest need. And then I think it was Park, Sherwood, you know,
Yes.
and then it'd be Washburn, Walton.
Yeah.
But Fairview still, their data wall would look much different, their
Yeah.
things. But they have to meet, they do progress monitoring, they're watching, they're held to the same accountability around student growth measures as all the other schools.
So any student at Fairview that is having a situation that they need help with.
Correct.
Is going to have the same attention as the kids at Sherwood or Park Avenue or wherever, but they're going to have minus Title I, but they'll have the same attention. They'll have an intervention.
They probably won't be pulled out to the degree that these students are.
But
They
we
do
ha-
more in-class interventionists. So if there are 20 students, they may have 2 students that they know they have to double dip. At Sherwood Heights, they may have 10 students that they have to double. So you have to put it in the percentage of the need. So they group, regroup. At the intermediate level, they group, regroup. They consider their special ed teachers interventionists. So they look, and Ryan's going to look at me,
I
but
know,
they look
that's
at
why I
all, Fairview looks at all staff availability and all needs. So they make sure, number one, special ed students are getting supported, and then they look at students that would be probably Title I students to get supported. They have Pam We Met, which is a teacher that supports the primary grades, and she attends the literacy specials. So their school is in the loop on what they're supposed to be doing in accountability. So yes.
And I think it's important to note, like, I'm going to go back, I think I can go back to this slide, that there are other students who are partially meeting at Sherwood that are not getting Title I. So I think that it's really important to note that in the schools that have very high poverty rates, there's so many children, and you'd be welcome to sit in on an RTI meeting if you would like. I think you would say, wow, I had no idea the scale of it, because there's so many children. And again, this is one slice, so we take this and we say, okay, look at these kids who are in yellow. Then we go and we do running records. It's a big process. It's not just like, oh, you know, there's a lot of steps here, but it's important to note that even the students in the Title I schools, not every single student that could use that pull-out layer that Katie was talking about are getting it. So they have to get it through other creative means, and we call them Tier 1 interventions. And so that means the classroom teacher or classroom teacher team has to take care of those needs. And we provide guidance, just as I know Stephanie and Celeste attend the PLCs at Fairview to you know, and provide guidance, and they invite other people to come in and assist. So I know they don't have that staff there, and I would like to say we do have the Title I staff, and we're very appreciative of it, and we're very grateful, and they do help a ton. I don't know how we would do it without them, but we have a ton more kids that could use support. Yeah. So our goal is always to
Can I
close the
interrupt you? I'm
gap.
sorry.
Sure. Yeah.
I just want to understand this. So the data monitoring spreadsheets, is that based off of the STAR reports?
Yes.
Or is it based off of their progress reports and their report cards?
STAR.
Only the STAR reports?
This today, what we're talking about is only STAR. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So if you have a bad tester, a child that's a bad tester, are there other means that
Yes.
you're?
Yeah. We triangulate data. Yeah.
That's what we do, is when we look at each child that's at risk by the means of showing through this test, and we ask why. And so we have children who have high anxiety, and so we'll say, all right, we know that the child has high anxiety, so we're going to make sure that child has an area in the classroom where he's really has a quiet space and so they don't see that the other kids are finishing before he does. So people are creative in that way to help. And some kids just aren't good test takers, and we know that historically, but we know it through, like Kim said, is we triangulate our data, we look at what else is happening. for
And
that
then you
child.
have mine that just says that he just picks whatever.
Yeah.
Well,
That's-
yeah,
it has
we
to
do
happen
that,
sometime.
yeah.
And then we have some kids that get really lucky and they like score really well. And we're going, okay, that student doesn't know how to write his name,
Yeah,
but he
right.
exceeded the standard. So it is a snapshot. And we call it a screening for, we say universal screening because it's a quick way to screen the kids. And then what's really important is that we take that data then and analyze it. So this next one here is about closing the gap. And so we have a lot of students, when Sue shows you the data, like she just showed you the STAR data, and it's hard to look at that. We look at that and we say, okay, this is where they're starting in the fall, and what our goal is to try to close that gap. And so we look at, did they make what we call adequate yearly growth? And the benchmark for that is 40 and above. So you can see where it's highlighted here. The students that are in green made adequate growth. And this is just another way to look at our students, and then the students that are in red did not make adequate growth. And so, for example, we might have a student who's in the first percentile. It's going to be very hard to get them to be proficient within a year, right? If I have a student who moves into Sherwood Heights and he's a 5th grader and he's reading at a 1st grade level, we're gonna layer and layer and give him as many services as we can to try to get them to as close as possible. And so not only do we look at proficiency, are they reading at grade level, but we look at, are we starting to close that gap and get them closer? And then, sometimes that's even our meets kids or exceeds kids, right? Are they making adequate growth and growing compared to other kids that are in their range?
So with our high mobility rate,
Yes.
and if they're in district, and they go from Sherwood to Park,
Right.
the data follows them?
That's a good question.
Yes.
Yeah, the STAR
Oh,
data
yes.
does.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that Susie picks them up from Sherwood, and she knows exactly what's going on with them.
Yes.
We usually review our CUME files and do things like that. This one actually shows a little bit of our mobility rate here. This is a report over time. This is the same cohort of kids. This is actually last year, and I think I sent 66 kids to the middle school last year. And you can see I have 46 that started with us. So this is just trying to compare apples to apples. So you can see we started only 46 kids that started with us in grade 3 finished with us in grade 6 out of 66. So you can see we lost a whole class within those couple of years. Just kind of shows you what we're working through. It not only impacts those kids, but you have to think it impacts the whole group, right? Because when you have kids moving in and out, you're constantly playing catch-up game, and that slows down the other kids. This is an interesting graph, and Zoe and I are always looking for trends for coaching support and curriculum, and looking at curriculum and what are our curriculum needs. And so in this report, you can see this is a cohort of kids, and you can see that green bar was getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And then and I picked this one strategically, most of them continue that, but I wanted to show you that you could see we had a little bit of a glitch in 6th grade, and why is that? And how are we going to adjust our instruction to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our students? Or are there some teachers in that group that need some coaching to adjust their instruction? I'm trying to think, is there anything else about this? Okay. So this is a neat little report because it shows the same cohort. It's about as apples to apples as you can get, but I also like it because it shows you just how many kids move in and out from year to year. And I'll end with this one. Most of the world will make decisions by either guessing or using their gut. They will either be lucky or wrong. One of my favorite quotes when we're talking about data, because we can guess, we can have our opinions on what is best for kids, but we don't want to guess. We want to make sure that we're making educated decisions by looking at data, reflecting on that, and then moving forward from there. So we don't want to use our gut, even though our gut it's good sometimes.
Thank you very much. That was very informative.
Excellent.
Okay, so we're going to move along. We're going to switch gears and get back up into the big picture. The high school graduation rate. And we're going to look at the four-year graduation rate for Edward Little High School. And you can see this over the last 4 years. And then you can also see the state. The state, 86, 87%. And we started at 80% in 2014-15, took a dip down, came back up, took another little dip down. And there are some important things to consider when we look at the graduation rate. One factor is that students who take longer than 4 years to complete high school don't count there. And we often have students that are either still enrolled or they're going on to adult ed, and those students are not reflected in the graduation rate. And then taking a look at our dropouts, we see some common characteristics. We have looked at that population, and many of those students transferred into Auburn. They're coming from our economically disadvantaged subgroup, and they experienced failure early on at Edward Little. They failed one or more of their classes freshman year. So that's where we are with our graduation rate.
And the high school does a similar thing with the data walls, collecting their data, looking at how are students progressing in their coursework. And, you know, the assistants and Scott and Neer are always looking at which kids do we have, and Pat, you probably remember, which kids do we have to keep on or make a plan right off and not wait till senior year. That's too late. Freshman year, they already are flagged. Sophomore year, I mean, they just watch and watch to make sure they're getting the credit for graduation. And then what are their interventions to try to pull that up? But a lot of the kids that they service, and then the middle school tends to continue, you know, when gaps are trying to close that gap so that they have more success at the high school, that's what we always are working on. But they do the same data look, it's just different.
So those kids are, excuse me, Tom, those kids are flagged when they come from 8th grade to 9th grade?
They
That
have
may be
data
potential?
coming with them, yes. So the freshman team, that's why they moved to freshman teams last year, is they wanted to have a better understanding of who those freshmen are and having a group of teachers really monitor the freshmen. That's why they do the freshman mentor program. So they know the 8th grade, when they send the 8th grade, they say, these are the students you need to be building relationships with, making connections with the parents, making sure they have the food, you know, all the necessary things to be successful. Scott's here if you have any other questions.
So students that fail one or more classes their freshman year, do we have any stats on whether they attended Auburn Middle School or whether they transferred in?
I don't right now, but we
we
can
could
look
get
into
that.
that and get that for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good question.
But, you know, an at-risk student often starts in kindergarten. You know, if they haven't been attending well in kindergarten, they're probably not attending well, you know. We will go over the list and say, I knew that student when they were in 2nd grade. You know, other students, though, you say, boy, they were resilient. What was put in place that caused them to be successful? We didn't think they would be, and wow, look at this. And a lot of the programs like Franklin's here, you know, the alternative programs, they have given students like that different opportunities to succeed. So those are important programs to maintain.
Do we know how many of the kids that have graduated, the percentage of the graduating kids are actually, I guess, homegrown Auburn kids the whole way through?
Yeah, we don't have it tonight. But
I don't have it tonight, but I can
Get
get
it,
that for you.
yeah.
I think you're going to get a picture when we go over, when we just look at 8th grade. You're going to
Yeah.
have a sense of how many students we start with and how many students we have by 8th grade.
Susie, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Katie just made a good point, is that you know that Elfrida started, and you saw her as, when you were a teacher.
Right.
And now, and then as a principal, and now you go, oh, God, is she still here?
Yeah.
She's still having problems, or whomever?
Right.
On it. So I think that's important, that we have teachers and
Exactly.
that are continuing to be, they stay in our system, they become teachers other places in different
Yes,
schools,
exactly.
higher levels, or superintendents, so that you can say, oh, I remember that. I think that's
Will
very
you have
important.
a real appreciation when you visited homes? I mean, Zoe and I started many years ago together, but, you know, when you know your community and you know the struggles and you need to empathize
And you know the families.
and you know the families. A lot of the times you know the why and you wish you could correct the why.
Right.
But what you do is the best you can
Right.
when they're with us. And, I mean, these two work, you know, night and day, worrying about what are we going to do tomorrow? So,
Yeah.
It's important to have that continuity of our staff.
yes, yes.
The other thing that makes a big, big difference is when you addressed the teaming approach. And I know that we don't have all the money in the world, and we're never going to have as many interventionists as we need, but if we consider each individual within, you know, the school can become, act as an interventionist, especially special ed. I mean, they're intervening all the time.
Exactly.
And I think that when you're looking at it from a team approach, you see different things, and you're following the students every year. That is key. That's really key.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing that. It's
Very good.
So we're going to move on from graduation rate to MEA results. And the MEA is the Maine Comprehensive Assessment System. It's the testing that we have, state testing. Our students in grades 3 through 8 take the Empower test, and in grade 11, they're taking the SAT. And the purpose behind this is to tell us how well Maine schools are educating students. Remember, we're in Maine, bigger picture of Maine, and to tell us how well Maine students are learning. And then the results from the MEA do help us determine where we need to support our kids. We get some information from this that's very helpful. I do want to show you the difference between the MEA and the universal screener that we have, the STAR test. The MEA is a very different test. It's much more complex and it's much more rigorous. So here's an example of grade 3 MEA reading on the left, and there's an example of STAR reading on the right. So with the MEA reading here, the students had to read 2 complete passages, and now they're considering the information that they read in both passages, and they're answering questions about that. And then they're having to write a constructed response where they are explaining some information from both passages, and they have to use details from the text to support their answer. And then over here is the STAR reading. They are reading a very short paragraph, and now they're answering a very short question that also has some clues in it. And so we're really talking about 2 different assessments. We really cannot compare the STAR assessment with the MEA in terms of the results. And you have the same thing here with math. On the left, you have a problem from the grade 3 MEA, a released item, and it is a complex problem. There are multiple steps involved, and often if you're not getting A correct, you're not getting B correct, and so on and so forth. So there's also a piece where students have to explain their mathematical thinking. And then on the right, you have the STAR math, and you have a computation problem. And the STAR does have some word problems, but it's multiple choice. So students are doing less thinking with that test.
lower level.
Yeah.
It's more literal.
It's a lower level test. And then just to give you an idea of the complexity, if you look at the grade 6 reading proficiency for the MEA, this is correlated to a Lexile range of 1030 to 1170. So considering that, some examples of books that are at that level are like The Call of the Wild, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, Animal Farm, it's a high school book. So it's a very upper level of reading that is required by the students. And the Lexile of 1150 is a prerequisite for 9th grade honors English, and that's in that range. So kids are really expected to be able to read and comprehend at a much higher level. That's an example up there of a test question where students, again, are reading 2 different passages One is narrative text and the other is a poem. And they're comparing and contrasting the roles of teachers in those two. And they have to use details from both passages to support their answer. So,
You have to type it, and it's timed.
yes.
You have to type,
So
and it's
Yeah.
remember when you
timed.
took the test and just to get through the one passage that you had to do, now you have to read two passages. You have to take detail from both passages. So if you only do one passage and not the other, you're going to not score well. So you got to have a lot of stamina and a lot of focus to get through it.
But presumably, we're teaching to
Right.
this rigor
That's
and
what we're
not to
moving.
the,
Where we're moving, yes.
and not to the star rigor.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
exactly it. Yeah.
So we're going to move right into the results. This is English Language Arts Literacy, and what you're seeing is overall for Auburn, grades 3 through 8 and 11. Auburn at 40.77% in terms of our percentage of students at or above expectations, and there's the state average at 50.24%. So we're below the state, but the state is quite low as well, 50%. And here's where we are by school for English Language Arts Literacy. This is percentage of students at or above state expectations. And Fairview is highlighted. Fairview is above the state expectations, above the state percentage. And then we'll move along. This is math. So percentage of students at or above state expectations. And Auburn at 28.13%, and the state average 37.05%.
Yeah, the state average.
So state average is quite low,
Both low.
as we're both low.
Correct,
Yeah. And given the test questions you just saw, you can understand why. Very difficult test. These are their math results by school, and Fairview was above the state average. So Fairview's highlighted there.
I have a question. So
Yes.
are kids that are in 5th grade or whatever grade, I don't, 5th grade, for instance, and they're taking a test, but their reading level is 3rd grade. So, I mean, it doesn't seem like the information is even accurate from the testing, because if you're getting information, how do we expect the kids to test if they can't even read at the level?
Therein lies the problem.
Yeah,
Yes.
yes, that is a huge
Why
challenge.
we're working to close the
Yep.
gap. Yeah.
Yep.
They need to be learning to read by 3rd grade in order to use the reading for other subjects. So that goal is, the benchmark is 3rd grade is when they really need their basics secured. And it's
Yeah.
just a losing game, and it's a struggle. And you see that the students start to behaviorally, they start to have a hard time because they're frustrated.
Yeah.
So that works into the whole thing.
Well, we do have some accommodations for students with IEPs, so that they can have, on the math section, they can have the text read aloud. So there are some things that we can do to provide students with better access to the test.
Some of the components
Yeah.
can be read to them, depending on which section.
When does a child qualify for an IEP?
When they qualify for special education, when they go through a process of referral and they're identified as a student with a disability.
So even though a child has low scores, they could still just be mainstream and not be IEP,
Correct,
so they're not getting help on the tests.
correct. We have some accommodations we can provide, but some students must have an IEP for. Yeah.
Didn't we have Walton Academy? Do we still have Walton Academy? Didn't we have Walton Academy?
We,
Long time ago.
it was a
Okay.
long time ago,
Did
yeah.
did we not have the Jump Start or whatever at Washburn?
Yeah, we do have
Yes.
Jump Start. for
Remember, this is
kindergarten.
grades, yes, this is grades 3 through 8, yes.
Say it again, Susan?
3 through 8.
Grades 3 through 8. So we do have, yes, we do have some programs where we would.
That's why you're seeing
Yeah.
higher kindergarten scores coming into the screening.
And that's
of those
That's
programs.
a good thing.
Yeah,
'Cause we-
Walton and Washburn are very troubling,
Yeah,
very
those are
troubling.
your highest
Yeah.
economically
Yeah, I
disadvantaged.
realize that, and mobility and
Right.
all that kind of stuff. But we have done some things
Yeah.
in Washburn.
Yes, and they have other data they can share.
Right, because that was
Right.
one of those schools that had an F or
Correct.
failed.
Yep.
And we had a program, right?
Right.
Want to remember, too, though, that this information that we're sharing is just one slice. It's just one piece. It's one piece.
Makes the news.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a problem.
Yes.
Many problems, but that's a problem. It makes the news.
Yeah, that's the frustration. And then in a few years, within a couple of years, there will be 3 major buildings right next to Fairview School. It will be workforce apartments. You're going to have an increase of students, and that's going to skew things as well.
You have to watch that for sure.
Yeah.
We might get Title I, there you
Yeah.
go.
That's right.
No, that's not a piece of pie that we can split, I know.
Yeah, you don't get more money. Okay, I know.
So I'll move along, and
Oh, that's
Yes, you
awesome.
did after all these years.
this slide is just showing you 3-year comparison, percentage of students at or above state standards for English language arts, literacy, and math. And so you can see where Auburn has been overall. So we took a little dip down in 16-17, and we came back about the same in 17-18 in literacy, and the state averages kind of hovered around 50. And in math, in Auburn, we have taken a little dip down since 15-16, and then we've come up a little bit. And the state has stayed around 38-37%. So again, the state's quite low. Auburn's low, but the state's quite low. Just to take a quick peek at the demographics for the testing, this last year, you can see the difference between Auburn and the state averages around economically disadvantaged, special education, English language learners, and homeless. So from this, you can see that we have a needier population in comparison to the state.
The other thing that factors in is there have been many changes in the state of Maine with the assessment and some of them have been year after year. So that really, it skews it. So I think people need to understand that makes all the difference as well.
Yeah.
We are above the state average for homeless?
Yes,
Right.
Too.
Yeah, a lot.
above,
There's a problem here.
yeah,
It's
Yeah.
higher this year?
yeah,
We're a service center.
I realize that, I know.
yeah.
Oh, I mean, that's what you're seeing.
Right.
So I just want to check with you, Katie, it's about 7 o'clock, you want me to keep going?
No,
or-
I think
Okay.
you only have a couple more, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a couple more. Okay. Keep rolling. So, yeah, going into a little bit of the challenges. And some of the challenges are not challenges, but they're more about demographics. This slide, I just wanted to emphasize again that there are multiple measures of data, and we're just looking at test scores tonight. And that in a school system, there are certain things that we have in our control and other things that are not in our control. We can influence these outside things like demographics, perceptions, and student learning. But what we really have and hold in our hands is what goes on in our schools, the teaching that goes on in our schools, and the curriculum that we're using. So it's good to remember that when we look at the data. Moving on, these are the poverty percentages, the percentage of students qualifying for free and reduced lunch at each school. And so when you think back to what you saw in some of those slides, you can correlate this number to how high the percentage was for each school.
Yeah, they're all high.
Yeah. So our poverty percentages, by the way, have gone up tremendously. In 2000, our district was at 37% free and reduced, and now we are at 59% this year.
Unbelievable.
So this has really changed for us over time. And then here's an interesting slide here on mobility for our 8th graders currently. 40% of the 8th grade students did not start school in Auburn. Last year, this number was around 50%. So when someone was asking about how many of our kids in high school that graduate, how many of them started with us, it would be interesting to look at that, because in 8th grade, 40% of the 8th graders did not start school in Auburn. And mobility, we know, has a negative effect size on student achievement. It can be equivalent to the loss of up to 1 year of learning. So this is the summer slide, and we've looked at this before, and we look at it every year. And this year, from the spring to the fall, our student scores went down about 10 percentage points in reading and math. So a student who was 60% in the spring was 50% in the fall.
So we have year-round school.
Yeah, I've been saying that.
So we,
Do we know the difference
And
in
we-
what last year's numbers?
it's right about the same. It's right about 10%.
All our buildings are climate controlled, we can have year-round school.
Climate-controlled
Yeah.
buildings.
And
that's
you
right.
do see that, when I come back in the spring, I share the results with you on the screening, and we've made gains, and then we come back in the fall, and we're, yeah. So this also I wanted to share with you because I think it really is a positive slide in some ways, because here we have the 8th grade class right now, all of the students, 55% proficient in reading and 62% in math, and then you have a subgroup. And the subgroup there in the middle is the students that are qualifying for free and reduced lunch, and they're mobile. They didn't start school with us. And so when you look at that subgroup and those two factors together, we're down to 39% and 37%. And that last set there is showing you our students that are paid lunch status, and they've been with us since kindergarten. And so that's in our current 8th grade class, that's 80% of the students are proficient in math and 69% in reading. So the kids that we would expect to do well are doing well.
And there are some parents that will say, how do we get those kids that are 39 and 37% that are mobile and
Yeah.
poverty to get to the higher? And it's truly out of our control.
Those things that are not in our control are not in our control. We
Right.
cannot control the demographics. We
Right.
can't. We can influence that, but we can't control that.
And we can influence by having more families that are well-educated and not poverty moving into our community. But it brings a whole host of other things.
And this is,
Kids are still there.
yeah, I mean, this slide is also, I'm just going to move on, this is going to show us the same thing. We're looking at the MEA and the achievement gap that is very apparent here. And the light blue is our students, this is Auburn. This is light blue is our students who are qualifying for free and reduced lunch versus the blue bar, which is our students who are paid lunch status. So this is just showing the significant achievement gap that exists here between
Which is above
these
the
groups.
state, right?
And yes, and I did want to point out that the paid lunch subgroup is well above the state average in both literacy and math.
So you have free and reduced lunch, but you also have community lunch in schools that offer free lunches anyway. So that community lunch program is generated from DHS
Correct.
on it. So that's not included in the free and reduced?
There are different ways that the state collects information on that. So for each student, there is a status. So within those schools where everyone's receiving free lunch, each student still has an identification of whether or not they're eligible or not. So that, bright spots, there were a lot of things to celebrate. So I quickly want to highlight some of those things. Park Avenue, Sherwood, and Sherwood Heights, and Fairview all scored above the state average in science, and well above the state average in science for those 3 schools.
And that's grade 5 last year?
That's grade 5 last year. MEA Math, East Auburn, Fairview, and Sherwood Heights had grade levels that scored above the state average. MEA Literacy, we had East Auburn, Fairview, and Park Avenue having grade levels that scored above the state average. And when we looked at the MEA Math and Literacy, which we just looked at the slides, non-economically disadvantaged subgroups scored above the state average. And then looking at MEA Math and Literacy, Walton and Washburn, both schools had subgroups that scored above the state average. So we definitely had some bright spots there. And then in our universal screening, over 60% of our kindergarten students met the reading benchmarks, and over 60% of our grade 8 students met the math benchmarks. And then for Edward Little High School on the SAT, their proficiency improved from the previous year, from 19 to 25% in math, and from close to 40% to 44% in literacy. So that's a celebration. And then we have looked at this data, all of the administrators, the teachers, everybody, you know, we've analyzed this and we have said, what are we going to do next? And so these are some of the steps that we're going to take in response to the testing results. We recognize that MEA is a rigorous test, and we know that it requires students to have a lot of stamina and a lot of independence, and we need to make sure that we're engaging them in similar tasks on a regular basis. And we are reviewing our subgroup data and using that for planning instruction, and making sure that we're giving students opportunities to practice the same types of items using the same technology and time requirements. We need to continue to address summer slide, and we have some programs that we're currently operating, and we're going to continue with those, and maybe we'll have the opportunity to add more this year if grant funds become available. We need to emphasize informational texts in our schools, because that is the kind of reading that students have to do, and analysis and comparison and, you know, all of those things. Addressing the outside factors with all of our available resources. So we talked about those: poverty, attendance, truancy. And then increasing student motivation and buy-in for the testing is important, especially in the upper grade levels. So we need to do that in an intentional way to motivate our students, and we need to recognize and celebrate their performance on these tests. And we also need to look at our universal screener, our STAR assessment, and we need to ask, is this aligned with the standards and what we teach? And so we need to look at what else is out there.
Right.
And then lastly, and maybe most importantly, we need to look at schools with similar demographics that are doing well. Why are they successful? What programs and practices are they using?
So that means we don't look at Falmouth and Cape Elizabeth, we look at Sanford and Bedford and Saco?
Yes, we look at schools with similar demographics who are doing well.
So when people compare that Falmouth is better, that's not the same demographic.
It's a
No,
no-brainer.
it's not.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
The other thing that has made a difference as well, and I know in my school, was looping. When you had your students for 2 years. They just picked the ball and ran with it the minute they came back, and it didn't take long to do that quick review to find out where they needed to be. And I found that my assessments were much better for the looping classes, because they did have the familiarity. 3 years is too much, but 2 years was just perfect.
Yeah.
So sometimes, like, thinking outside the box might be a strategy.
Right.
You know.
And we have looped.
Yes.
We have
Yeah.
looped.
Do
We
we,
looped at
do we have
Fairview.
current ones right now? Do we have current loopings?
Yeah.
I would.
Yeah.
I would
It
think so.
varies.
We have teaming.
I mean, you have to have two teachers that want
Right.
to collaborate and
Definitely.
do that.
Yes.
So I know at Walton, their pre-K and first and kindergarten teachers have looped this
Yep.
year.
It's very successful, you know, and
Depends.
just a good
Yeah.
start for the kids.
And I think, you know, this last slide is really, you know, what are we doing about this? We have a lot of initiatives going on in our district right now that are based on research and best practice. And this pyramid shows what's really important, and some of the things that I've heard tonight in the discussion around relationships and having a safe and collaborative culture for our students. It's really important to have the parent-teacher-student relationship early on so we can build on that. We have a lot of things going on in all of our schools, but especially in our elementary schools right now, around positive behavior, intervention, and support, and the growth mindset. And then the next thing that's really important is effective teaching in every classroom. And we have to have that. That is a key. That's in our control.
That's right.
The teaching that goes on in our classroom. And Michelle talked to you about the PEPG program. We have Marzano's instructional framework. So we're really working hard on that, and that's a goal. And then to have a guaranteed and viable curriculum. So we have now a pre-K to 12 curriculum in Auburn, and there's a progression of learning for our students to move through that curriculum. which is standards-based, based on the Common Core. And the end result is that we want all of our students to achieve high standards. So that's the goal we're working toward.
Well, thank you.
Good,
All
very
right.
good.
Thank you.
Much. Very,
Convene the regular
very
meeting in 5
informative.
minutes.
We don't have,
Now we're doing, yep, I think we are now. Look at that, magic in the back room. Communications. Does anyone have communications they'd like to share with the board? Yes, Pat.
Okay. They told me to do, Katie suggested I do this during communications, but maybe we'll switch it next time. This is the
Yeah, I
CIA.
said you can do it at,
Oh, you want to do it
committees,
at
yeah.
committees, sorry. Okay, no, I'll do it later,
Okay.
if I'm still awake.
report out on the Curriculum Assessment Instruction Committee.
I'm just excited.
Yeah, and you're very well prepared, and I'm
yeah,
proud.
that's good.
Good deal.
One
Yes,
communication, the mayor would like to thank the city, the school department for the quick turnaround for these. They were less than, not even, probably 1 to 2 days, and he was so excited about it.
Yeah, Larry Gordon did them.
Yeah, Larry Gordon did, and he does our DKG stuff, but it was a beautiful job, and he was just so excited, so he wanted to make sure that I thanked the school committee on behalf, and at the same time, I'll put a plug-in for this. It's a plug-in for New Year's Eve, and it's the first New Year's Eve ever that we're having a live party. It'll be outside, and it is a free event, but there's also a $20 VIP tickets if you want to have VIP status, and I can't describe to you what it's going to be, but it's going to be special, whatever it is. So if you want to find out about it, please look
What
on
the
the
mayor
website.
said is if you want to be warm that night,
Yes,
in the warm
that will-
tent, you want to pay the $20.
Right,
Yes.
right, definitely. So it's going to be right in downtown where the awnings are and everything. So please talk to your friends and neighbors and come on down.
sounds good. Anyone else? We'll do Faith.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to share that I've had actually several people reach out to me with concerns about the additional items for the high school and the price tags that are going around. And I've just reassured everybody that ask any questions and, but they are concerned about especially the pool, the amount of the pool. And I explained that this is something.
It's a wish list.
It's a wish list. There's more discussion, but a couple people did say they heard that we were crazy for wanting all these items. And I explained to them, those are just all the items listed, and we are going to go through and be fiscally responsible when we, decide what we're going to. So just thought I'd share that. But if anybody else has questions, feel free to reach out to any of us, and hopefully we can answer the questions you have.
Very good. Jenna?
Am I sharing constituent stuff now too, or after?
You can at the item, when we get to that item you want to share. I'll remember to go. Jenny, you had somebody. What?
Resignation.
What? The other announcement? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to congratulate Jillian Richardson, who was named All-State Cross-Country Runner by the Portland Press Herald, Maine Sunday Telegram. She had a heck of a year.
Another one.
Good. All right, I have an announcement. I'll be resigning after tonight's meeting. My family is moving to Jackman on December 14th.
Jackman, my uncle used to be the manager of the town of Jackman. It's a lovely place. Yeah?
Yeah.
Oh.
So we will miss you.
Jenna,
We'll
we'll miss you terribly.
But you'll have a beautiful surroundings. It's going to be gorgeous up there. Good luck.
We'll miss you, but I do think you're crazy.
Just don't move in.
I want you to be happy.
Just don't move in with green hair, okay?
I won't have green hair.
Good, good.
Yes, Dan?
Had some communication with concerns, maybe we can hear from Russ about this, about combining their school in the high school,
Yes.
Franklin.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's a concern or if it was.
That's
really-
going to be part of the
Yeah,
presentation.
I like the idea. I like
I
the idea
had
that they're
the
both
same.
going into the high school.
That
long
is
overdue.
on, that will be an
Yeah.
agenda item. We can talk
Long
more.
overdue.
Be an opportunity for us to weigh in on that and discuss that, as well as the public, when we get to that point.
Yeah.
I believe there will be some comment on that,
Here.
as most of us have had some correspondence or some communication regarding that.
Be interesting.
Anything else? Moving on to the consent agenda, which is the approval of tonight's agenda and the approval of the minutes of our previous meeting. We have a motion to approve?
Second.
All those in favor? Thank you very much. We move on to public participation at this point. We invite anyone in the public to come up and present an item or a concern that they have at this time. of something that's not on the agenda. If you are here about our programming possibilities for the new high school, we will provide an opportunity for that in our first superintendent's report, so you don't need to do that right now during public session. But if anything is not on this agenda that you'd care to share with us and bring a concern to our attention, please come to the mic, state your name and address, so that we have the opportunity to get back to you if it's necessary, and we can proceed from there. All right, no one's jumping up, and I will take that as we've got more when we get into the programming and positions. We have no student reps tonight, so we'll move on to the
They did notify me they were not able to be here.
Not going to be here. Superintendent's report, which is we're basically a lot of information to see where we are and hopefully where we're going.
Oh, look at that.
Going to get it
Great
just
timing.
in time. Look at that. When you're under the gun, Tanya, you just perform. That's what it is.
You have a house up there? I knew a guy who was on the fire department.
But you're going to be bored there.
I'm looking at the school committee up there right now.
I think there's a school committee.
It is. There's 7 committee members, 5 from Jackman, and
It worked. Okay, all right. Okay, all right, so I'm going to be sitting here through the 3 items that we're having discussions with tonight, so I can look at you when you're talking and okay, and vice versa. So the first agenda item is on, and we just hit the arrow and it didn't work. So Tanya, don't go far. So oh, it's moving, but I don't know it's moving. Okay, thank you. Yeah, okay. No, but if I know to look up, I'm fine. Okay. All right, so as you know, we're working on the new high school, and we're on a fast track. So Mark Lee is here, and Lisa Sawan is here from Harriman to support me if there is a question I may not have the answer to. Due to being on a fast track, we learn as we go when we're meeting with the Department of Education what steps have to be taken throughout this process. So right now, we're working on a space allocation workbook, which I think we've talked about before. We look at what is currently being offered at the high school and allocate space for that, as well as looking at allocation of space we hope to have. And a lot of it is educating the Department of Education of what we currently do and what we hope to do, as well as convincing them this is something we plan to do. Well, part of that requires the school committee to show support for the space allocation that has been put in the notebook. So when we've gone through the state at 2 meetings with the Department of Education, going line by line of how many science classrooms, English classrooms, aspiration classrooms, offices, health space, all of that, they ask a lot of questions. Scott Anir has been joining our meetings, and Rob Callahan, so that if there's clarification that needs to be done, they're there as a resource around those space allocations. In order for the high school to be designed, those space allocations have to be approved and said, this is what the state will support, and this is what local dollars will need to be for the educational programming. So the list that has come out for the community, we already know will need local support. There is also in space allocation, we are allocated 185 square feet per student, and we're working off the enrollment number of 1,180. So when you multiply that, that gives you the target that the state is saying
we fund that amount of square footage. Now we know it isn't going to be perfect and come out exactly to that square footage. There's going to be certain items that we know we need for educational, that we need to talk with the state about, that this is very important to our educational programming, and they're going to say, yes, you can go over that square footage for that item, or no, you may not go over square footage on that item unless you're going to locally fund it. For example, I'll give you one, adult education space. Our adult education offices are at the high school, as well as we have an office here at Auburn Hall. The state does not pay for adult education space at the high school. So if adult education space, which it is currently in the space allocation, we have to say local dollars will go towards that space. So there's an example that we take for granted. Of course they would support adult education space, but what they assume is you're going to use the space that the students during the day will not use. Even though we know we have some adult ed programs that go on during the day. For example, our CNA course we can offer during the day in a space that's open in our aspirations wing. So that's a really good example of what is going to be in the space allocation that we already know is local dollars. Okay? Tom?
Wasn't a lot of the space allocation driven by the ed spec that we approved back in September?
Well, if you're going to put things in there that you currently don't have, yes, they would want to hear our argument on that. Mm-hmm. But yes, everything that is in our, but they won't, it's not like we have a 21st century classroom. We really had to talk through with the state what we meant by that, because they're like, well, you don't have that now, and we had to explain. But when we talked about what we were going to do with 21st century and having that flexible classroom, that if a teacher has a great idea for a course, that we have a space that they could do that. For example, this year we're doing the tiny house course. So we explained that. So it wasn't an automatic because you had it in the ed specs that they would be funding. A lot of it is what have they funded in other high schools? You know, okay, well, if you've done it in this high school, you're willing to do it in our high school. So there's a lot of negotiating, talking, understanding in order to come to what they're willing to do for state dollars for the project.
Katie, I want to be sure, you said fast track, and I understand what your fast track means, but to the public, fast track might mean something different. So what we've done as a building committee, we've worked on this for almost a year and a half, 2 years. We're deliberate. We have a great building committee that we've been working with, and they're very deliberate. And so we're not pushing this fast. We are just on a track, finally, that the state can see what we've done, and now we need approval. So that's what your fast track is, that we're moving now. We're moving now.
Well, we chose June.
Right.
Right? So when you choose June and you back it all the way up, if we had chosen November of next year, we'd be on a different track. So we chose June, which backs up the timeline, so we have to make sure things are done. So it's going to feel, for some people it's going to feel quick, for some people they wish it was built 2 months ago. So I agree with you. Some are thinking we do too slow and some too fast.
Very deliberate process that
Absolutely.
we're doing.
Correct.
We're not rushing this.
Right. Well, we're doing the steps we
Right.
need to do to get to a June referendum.
Right.
Yes.
Katie,
Yes.
just how many square feet is the current EL? Just to,
And Billy's here. Right, Billy? Square footage. 165,000.
okay, just so I can,
Now, the 185 square feet per student does not include the career and technical education satellite. That would be an additional around 54,000 square feet. So you combine the two, and I think we're around 260,000 square feet. So it's going to be a big high school. So tonight we're having discussion on the items that we need as a building committee and for the Department of Education on your December 19th meeting for approval. So as Harriman works through the design, which we plan to roll out to the community on January 23rd, we have to have it solidified what is going in to the high school in addition to the current high school offerings. So they require this. They require on December 19th that we'll take each item separately and you vote on them separately. They do not need to be in the budget this coming year. I'm going to talk about two of the positions that you will probably see in our budget because it's in a high need right now. It's not going in, it's not being discussed because of the new high school. It's being discussed because it's a need now and it's going into the new high school. That makes sense. You have to have it in your budget, these items considered in your budget for the year that the school is opening. Okay. So we have 5 years of planning coming into, if everything goes according to plan and we open for 2023, we really are now down to 4 years of planning for some of these programs coming in and for us with the career and technical education, because you have to not only approve the program, you have to approve that you're going to have a staff member teaching it. So that's going to have, you know, two parts to it. So the positions, there is space in the new high school allocation book for a computer science teaching position. Right now, Eric Eisman was hired as a physics teacher, and he is teaching a block of physics, but he's also teaching a lot of computer science engineering courses, which has been wonderful. So we need to replace his position with a science teacher. But he is the science position. He would move into the computer science position, and then they would replace his position in the science department. So him offering that puts pressure on the science department. It's good for kids, and the staff has worked hard to do that, but we also recognize there's a need there. The other space is a substance abuse counselor space, is in the space allocation. If you remember, years ago, we had a substance abuse counselor at the high school. When we hit the 2007-08, when we were in trouble budget-wise, it didn't hold up. It was looked at as something that communities should provide and not schools. Well, we all know, as we read many things, we see many instances in the paper and in the news, this is a dire position. This needs to be in. You're going to get a later presentation, probably in January, about the epidemic of joules. And I call it an epidemic because that is what I would say the high school's dealing with all day long, is students with joules from every student population. And so that is we are now right now partnering with Healthy Androscoggin to offer support for students. We used to have what was called a CERT program, where it was a smoking program where students, if they were caught, they would go through this program to get educated. We haven't had that program. So they've reached out, the high school has reached out to Healthy Androscoggin to offer a course. So they are now offering a course. So if an athlete has an infraction, they can now serve in this program and be back practicing sooner, or less suspension time, I should say, not the practicing. It's suspension time for all students. So other students that might have had a suspension, they can offer to go into the course to lower their suspension. So that's what we did in the past, and we're bringing that back in. So this is a position that the high school needs. Pat?
Correct me about the timing of this. Mm-hmm. These are going in immediately? Because we can't wait 5 years for a substance abuse case.
No, these were the two positions I said you would see in the budget this year.
This year, okay, good, I missed that.
Yes, these will be in the budget this year.
Okay, that's good.
Jenna?
Are you guys looking to hire a substance abuse counselor that would stay in the school, or are you looking to contract outside?
Well, it's going to depend on availability. Okay. We will bring it in as a position and then see what happens. Right now, we do obviously have outside groups like health affiliates, Spurwink, that do social services in our schools and support our students in all of our schools, which is a wonderful asset. But this is a need that's not being even met through them. New programs are all the career and technical satellite programs. So these are the programs right now that Rob Callahan has identified will come into the Edward Little High School. That's the culinary arts. Early childhood education is an additional that will be at both sites. Emergency medical technician, firefighting science, law enforcement training, cosmetology, information technology, precision manufacturing, manufacturing and robotics, engineering and architecture, composite manufacturing, CT exploration medical, and then there's a CTE administration position. So there's an office for a CTE administrator.
I know I'm fiscally responsible, but I'm looking at another thing that could be added that I really feel is important, and that is agriculture. Right. Where we're doing a lot of work with the Ag Zone and trying to maintain and promote, farms within our city so we can have healthy food. Right. Is there any way that we can add that in there?
Not at this time, no. What we can do is we definitely can offer a pathway that would include students having experience.
Yeah, I would like to see something like that there because we have our schools with their gardens, and then we have people who are working in the neighborhoods with gardens as well. So I would, I think there's a lot we can do to promote that with our young people and bring it forward.
We currently have a chemistry through agricultural program. So I think we have to be clear, all programming doesn't need to go through career and technical.
Right.
There'll be other options because remember, our students will have access to these programs, but so will the other high schools. So other high school students will be coming in to these programs, not just EL students.
And the culinary arts is a second location.
Right, and yes, correct. Culinary arts and early childhood education are secondary, yeah. The two programs that have space allocation for transferring in are the Franklin Alternative School and the Students of Success program. You often hear me, we say RETC, the Regional Educational Tech, no, I'm not going to say that right. Treatment Center, thank you. It was coming. So the SOS program is the high school program. So those are mostly majority Edward Little High School students that participate in that program. Now the Franklin Alternative School I know is a passionate program around not wanting to probably be included in the new high school. I met with the staff yesterday to discuss this, that the decision is to put them in the new high school. We have 4 years for planning. That part of visits to other high schools was asking how they were handling their alternative program and their special ed programming. At Hamden Academy, I did talk to the person that was overseeing that alternative program, and they said it was hard. It was a hard decision that they were coming in, especially for the students that would be at Franklin and then transitioning into the new high school. He said after those students have come through the program and new students have started, there isn't the same because they've never been not in the high school. So they've seen that as a transition, that the students who never were off-site don't know the difference of the program. Sanford High School also brought in their alternative program and their special ed program as well. And that high school principal said they had a lot of discussion on it. Really talking about the positives. I've asked Russ Barlow and Chris Goslin to go visit Sanford. They're scheduling a visit so that they can see how do students arrive, where are those programs located. I am just as sensitive about those students have a lot of need. They did not have success at the high school, and it's seen as, well, they get a new fresh start off-site. I recognize that. I also recognize that those students can transition to that type of program in the same building if we design it the right way and make sure that we design the right way. I told the staff I would not allow a design that would not best serve these students. I'm not going to do it if it doesn't make sense. Now the issue is we have to put it in the space allocation booklet now. So we have time to work out all the worries, get the students involved in the design. Harriman knows how important these two programs need their own entrance. I have pushed at the Department of Education that they need to have a separate area. So I've asked Russ, I want him down there asking tough questions of the group. What are their lessons learned? What do they wish they had done differently so that we can do what's best for our students? Are totally doing this because I believe the students can access a lot of the resources they're already accessing by being in the building more so. They can, the nurses, the nurse service, the CTE programming, which they already are accessing at Lewiston Regional Technical Center. There are students that participate in chorus, in the athletics. There are other programming that I think those students could be accessing if they were right on site. So I think if we go into it with an open mind and a opportunity, think of it as an opportunity rather than it's not going to be good, I think we can do great things with bringing them in. I also had a meeting with the SOS staff, and we had a similar discussion. As the staff member said there, this is a time for visioning. We're visioning forward that we're going to be coming back into the high school. We have time to really talk it through. What does this mean? There's a lot of details. Both programs have middle school students, so we have to discuss that. We've discussed what will happen with those buildings and programs that are in, for example, the RETC program. So there's a lot more details I don't have answers to. I don't have answers to. What we have to decide is, are they going to be in the space allocation notebook? We are spacing for them 65 students for Franklin and 20 students for SOS program. So Harriman knows those numbers. They know what they currently have in their space, and that has gone into the allocation notebook. So that's why, and I know, I know that this is not necessarily a popular decision around the Franklin alternative. I believe if we work together and we really get the students involved and the staff involved, we can make it a positive opportunity for those students.
I would like to commend you on your stance on this because I'm 100% behind this. I've always felt that out of sight, out of mind. And if the kids are going to be following some positive role models who are at the upper end of the spectrum, they're not going to get that by isolating them from other students. But there are a lot of things that this building can do in terms of, providing placements for them where they don't have to stay in one spot. They can be, transferred from one spot to another depending on, when they do well, when they don't, that kind of thing. There's just so much that you can do with that. But they're part of the village, and I'm 100% behind that.
Bonnie?
I agree with you and I don't agree with you, Elfrida, on it. I feel, having visited these schools, visiting Hampton Academy, going to Sanford and a couple of the other schools that we visited, and I think that there are parents here from Franklin tonight, and I understand your problem, I understand your heart on it. However, you need to go up to Hampton Academy. I think that was the one I was most impressed with. The building sits like this, and they're at the end of the building with their own entrance. They don't have to interact. They can do the same things they do now because they're chosen. You've chosen to put your kids, let them go to Franklin, is because you don't want them interacting with these kids up here. You want to have them interacting with what they want to do and being safe on it. This is an alternative education program for your child on it, and I think it's important that they come in from a different exit. It's going to look just like a separate school. Only if they want to go through that door into the main corridor will they go on it. There's going to be, we discussed it last night in the building committee, we're going to have lunchrooms or cafeterias that are not all located in one big location that will give your kid a heart failure to go into. We're going to have a small dining area for them That was our purpose last night, one of our purposes that we came up with in the building committee last night. I think that there needs to be a trip to Hampden Academy, at least to Hampden or to.
Well,
to
Sanford's
Sanford.
larger. Hampden Academy has 20 students, and Sanford has 40.
I think that you're going to
matches
see
a little more.
that your child has evolved from Franklin. When I knew Franklin 100 years ago, when it was first formed, and there was a very nice principal there that was very in-your-face kind of guy, and now we have a very nice principal that's saying, what can you do? What are your opportunities? You need to do something other than just being in this building. And I think that you're going to see that this is going to work for your kids. Go visit. Let us know when you're going, or would you like to go, and go visit with Mr. Barlow and see what's happening. I think you're going to think that it's a good idea. Many opportunities for your child.
I'll be to you, Pat, in just a second. I'm going to let the public, if they wish to comment, following Pat, or following comments on the school committee. So you'll have.
Tom, can
you get to you, but Pat's next, Bob.
The reason that, as you all know, that Franklin was part of the initiatives began because the kids needed to be in a smaller environment. That's their academic and their socio-emotional needs were fulfilled by being in that. So if you can convince me that this space or whatever will be removed from the others, if you can ensure me that the staff from Franklin and students will be involved in this process, that would be the only way I could support it.
Bob?
Tom, Katie, I'm very task-oriented. So tonight you're going to need us to approve what programs are going to go so you can take to the state?
Tonight, you're having a discussion.
Yeah,
The vote
it's
is
not an
not till
approval
the
tonight, Bob.
19th. I didn't think I should spring it on you, so you're having a discussion tonight, and then the vote is December 19th.
So any other
Parent.
school committee? Yes, I know. I'll have them up in a second. Jenna?
I just have information from a constituent, so I don't know if we want to take them first.
No, we'll go with you first. If you would.
Okay. I just wanted to, I got a call from a constituent that was concerned about this as well. It was Dan Campbell from 294 Hotel Road, who wanted to voice his concerns but couldn't be here tonight. He was very concerned with combining the two schools. He didn't go into a lot of detail, but he just said that he think it would be an injustice to have the two schools combined. So I wanted to make sure that I voiced that concern for him.
All right, take public comment now. If you'd come up, name and address, and share with us your thoughts.
Is that the one?
Hi, my name is Jen Liberty. I live at 85 Glendale. I'm sorry, I had to write it down. I have been employed by the Auburn School Department since 2001 and have spent 13 of those years working with the amazing staff and students at Franklin. Some of you may know that I was also a student at Franklin. I was like many of the students I now serve. I was raised in poverty. I was a victim of abuse. I was an emancipated minor. Franklin was a place where I could feel safe, understood, and cared about. I'm sorry, this was dropped on us yesterday, and I'm having a hard time. This is what Franklin has offered kids like me for the past 40 years, to feel safe, understood, and cared about so that we could earn a high school diploma. We are known as the most successful, longest-running alternative program in the state. Our sister city pays tuition for some of their students to attend Franklin because they've seen how it works. Auburn residents should be proud because we are the school that all other schools go to when they're starting their own alternative programs. We have been the exemplar. So you can imagine my surprise at the staff meeting yesterday when we were told in no uncertain terms that we will be moving our program to the new EL building. As professionals who work with at-risk kids, we were not consulted in these plans. Nobody asked us how this would impact the students we serve. We were referred other schools that we should go take a look at, but these schools are not, they do not have the longevity of our program. They do not have the number of kids that we service. She explained to us the cost effectiveness of having access to services offered by the regular high school. But for me, it's about the human cost. Most of our students avoid going to the regular high school because they have triggers from a time when they were bullied or harassed, or because they have social anxiety and a school that size is just too much. I am not resistant to change. As a teacher in this district, I've attended these meetings with my students to show you about our innovative reading programs using the iPads before they were ever used at the high school, to exhibit the art and writing our students created while participating in the Moral Courage Project, which is a 10-plus-year collaboration with USM, and to tell you about our hiking class and other innovative ways we are helping our students earn summer credit to graduate from high school. I embrace change when I see how it benefits the students I serve. I am here to question why, as a primary stakeholder in this program, our teachers were not included in making this decision. How can we know it's the right thing to do for our kids without this imperative perspective? Do you really want to make extreme changes to this proven, successful program without investigating the impact? Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I have a couple questions I wanted to ask her. Is this appropriate time for it?
Not really.
Just to clarify why she did not find it successful to stay in the, in the mainstream, why it made her
I don't
it so
think that's
difficult.
appropriate for this audience. I don't believe that's appropriate at all. Is there any other in the public
I think
who
it
would
is.
like to? Yes.
Hi, thank you. My name is Marian Gagney. I live at 5 Beach Street in Auburn. I'm not only an adult in this town, but I was also a student of Franklin. I graduated in '96. I also attended Stevens Mills even before that. Let me tell you that at 14 I was pregnant, and I was in Auburn Middle School, and I was terrified that I was going to have to quit school. I couldn't imagine going around with the students who were starting to see my belly show, and being around and integrated with those other students. I understand the part that we're saying that it would be separate. I don't think it would be separate enough. For me, I honestly would not have finished school. I went on to Franklin, had my second child after I got married right before my senior year, and was thankful to be able to go back to Franklin and have a place to go that even though I was raising 2 children and married, that I could feel safe and graduate with my class so that they could grow up. Those children are now 23 and 26 and went to college and didn't have children before because they learned lessons from me that I learned from Franklin that I wouldn't have had the chance to at EL. I could not have gone there and been integrated or even on the same grounds as some of those other students. And I just want to make sure that we're really, really thinking about the other side of this, that I understand the numbers and these are the students and what students won't know because they'll never know it's separate, but you can't count the numbers of the students that just won't show up. Thank you.
Moment, Bob, if any other public care to comment? All right, Bob?
Tom and
No, he's coming up, Bob. Excuse me.
My name is Jamie Gagney, and I went to Franklin as well. And the proof is in the pudding, I think. I mean, when people look at alternative schools, they don't come to see what Franklin is doing and how they've had such a great success rate with what they've done, and I just think if it ain't broke, don't fix it. And I'm not sure how much money you're going to be saving to make this integration that might work, but when something is working as well as Franklin has, with the success stories it has, I think it's something definitely should be kept in mind. So, thank you.
Good. Thank you for your comments. Bob?
Yeah, I would like Tom and Katie, what did Russ Barlow say about this?
He's welcome to come up and share his thoughts as well.
Ready for my thought? Yeah. Okay. As with everything, there's a yin and a yang, and I know that. There's no question. When I think about the students at Franklin, I think about literally the hundreds of students that I interview every single year and their parents. What is really consistent is our safe school culture. We make every single student, and I take the sign on the front of the building extremely seriously. We all do. Every one of the students. We make everyone as a family feel socially, emotionally, and academically safe. And that's extremely important. So when we take the students on if it's going to be at the new EL, there has to be a guarantee that they are socially, emotionally feeling safe when they get there. But I have to tell you that it's a rarity, and I know how when the program began, the hope was the students were going to come to us, and then we were going to somehow mainstream them. And the students over time have become extremely reliant on the family atmosphere that we have in the building. And that is really difficult to duplicate anywhere. That's why I think we're the most successful program in the entire country. I get phone calls all the time from everywhere. We just had one from one of the local districts who's struggling. So when I think of this, I think about all of the time and the energy everyone has put into the programming that goes on there. All of these students that I interview and their parents, there are certain triggers that are extremely common among the individuals I interview when I speak to them. And what's really common is a social phobia of some sort. That's extremely common. Interactions are triggers that students have had with teachers, other teachers, that may not, and I know we have time, but that may not completely understand what student safety actually is. I've never heard a teacher in our building tell a kid to shut up. I hear it at the high school. Okay? We would never say that. If we have a problem with someone, we excuse them from the classroom and we have a conversation about what just went down. So and I'm not pointing fingers because I taught in the general public high school in Turner. But what's really consistent is the respect that our teachers show the students, and the students, in fact, show the teachers. And you can go look at the books right now. I think I've had six incidents. We talk about PBIS, 6 incidents since the beginning of the year. That's it. And some people say, Russ, you got the toughest job in the world. I got the best job in the world because when you give respect, you get respect. And that's what I do all day long, and that's what we do as a staff. I don't know how we're going to duplicate it. Okay? I'm not sure. There's a reason why this has lasted 40 years. And this is our 40th anniversary, May 1st, as an advertisement. We're at the Green Ladle, 1095. But the truth of the matter is we're very successful, and there's a reason why we are. And I will ask, and I'll end it with this, why does Lewiston's program that's in the building not work? It doesn't. Not like our program. Lewiston sends their students to us. We love the kids. So it kills me. I'm not a crying man, but I could cry.
Russ, will you go and visit Sanford for us?
I am going to go and visit Sanford. This is...
Take people with you. Take
Yeah.
your staff with you. Take parents with you, or
Yeah,
whoever, and see.
but we'll go look at Sanford, we'll go look at Hamden, I think. What was the other one, Katie? Was Sanford and Hamden. But again, we're at 65. Right now, we're probably at, 73 or 77 with the middle schoolers. But these other schools are 25, 30, 40 kids. They're not 65.
But go look and see
Sure.
what the physical outlay is
Sure.
on it, and what you can vision that you can do with it. It's your program, it's your end of the building, it's your upstairs, wherever it goes, it's yours. So vision what you can do with it before you shut your eyes on it. Because I've been here a long time. Okay?
I know that.
And I was here when Franklin almost started, okay? And I've been through many, many turns with Franklin. We've employed students from Franklin in our business. So I understand Franklin inside and outside of it. So just go look and see. Try to teach an old dog new tricks and see what happens. Take your parents with you, take your staff with you. Billy's got a couple of vans that he can drive.
John Billy?
Yep. See what he can do.
Okay.
Take it with you, please, and look.
Yeah, we've sent Sanford 3 dates, and we're just waiting.
And I'm going to go with them when they're talking. Please go and see,
Yep.
because I don't think it's going to be new. It's going to, I wouldn't send you there, because I've been with this program for a heck of a long time on it, and I wouldn't send you there if I didn't think it would work on it. And when I first saw it at Hamden, I went, what's going on here? And they talked us through it. So go look and then come back to us.
Katie, what's the biggest reason for doing this? Saving money?
Thank you, Russ.
Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of consideration around opportunity. So seeing it going into the new high school is similar to what we're doing. It made sense with what they're doing for programming, what their opportunities are for programming. There were more pros and cons. I agree with Russ, it's a yin-yang. It's your decision on whether it's going to be included on the space allocation. The move would not be made until it opened, so there is work to do. There's no doubt that there's work to do around having it transition in. So that's mostly is when majority for me was really thinking about the opportunities for the students. They have a great program. I don't think it's the building that makes the program. I think it's the people. Right. So I'm convinced that their safe school culture can exist. And I know the high school, there are students that don't make it at Franklin also that return back to the high school. There would be a closer collaboration between the two programs that would make it advantageous. So it's an opportunity. Russ and I go visit and we don't see what we're hoping to see, or we don't hear what we hear, we can discuss it. The issues were on a timeline with the space allocation. I wish I had more time. Russ and I talked about where the staff would stand on going to the new high school. I knew the answers. I've been in this district a long time. I've been at the program. The program's been at 3 different sites. I know that. I was looking at the positive sides, the opportunities, recognizing that there will be students that have never been off-site. To them, their alternative program exists here. So that's what my thinking was. You all can decide that you don't want it to go in the space allocation notebook. That's why we're having discussion tonight. And if there's more information you need, they're going to go visit. I think their dates were before the 19th, I'm almost positive. And- Right, so, but we can work with them to get in there before the 19th, and maybe we'll come with a different concept. But that, you know, yes, I'm the superintendent, I had to make a hard decision on it, and I had to weigh out the pros and cons. Russ and I talked about it, and that was the decision. But you have the ultimate decision, and it's not an easy one. Faith?
So just so I understand everything, so in order for them to get a new facility, it has to be on the same site as the high school? There's no option to build them a new facility off-site?
They don't need a new facility. They're in their facility.
Right, but to give them opportunity, so that's just not an option.
Well, the opportunity was close proximity to different options in programming. It's not, the building doesn't offer the opportunities.
No,
like
I get that, but it would be nice if we could get a new building.
Right, yeah.
But that's not an option.
They've had a lot of work at their current building, but no, there's not an option to build a new building.
Just so I'm clear on that.
Yes.
Can some of the school committee go to see Sanford High School?
Absolutely,
I
definitely.
would like to do that.
Sure. I'll let you know when we're headed down.
I would like to join you. I used to teach behaviorally disordered kids for half of my lifetime.
Okay.
That's why I
Yeah.
support this.
We can go down together. We can set up 2 visits. I mean, the principal couldn't have been more open. He's like, definitely come down, definitely ask the questions.
Right.
The only thing about going to Sanford is that you've got to be careful. This is a brand-new school.
Right.
that just opened a month ago, 2 months ago.
Just for the layout.
So, yes, it's for the layout of the school that you're going for.
Right.
Not necessarily what's in there. You're right.
It's just
So-
to see how it would be laid out.
Right.
Yeah, the principal said it would be good to see how they've designed it, what it works. Mark and Lisa are very familiar with how they set it up, and so they know what we're looking for.
So they don't have a track record if they only opened a month ago.
Right.
Well, they have right, but we can have lessons learned about how are they adjusting to their space, not adjusting to their space, lessons learned. We also,
Can go to Hamden.
we can
'cause
go to Hamden, who's been in, I think, 5 years or so.
Right.
So yes.
John?
I think for me, one of the biggest concerns after hearing everybody's thoughts is I had a best friend that got pregnant at 17 as well and went to Franklin Alternative School. And I just think about, she was very self-conscious. And I think about even if the school is set up so that there's a different entrance, you still have to park in the parking lot. You still have to walk up and you still have to go in the school. So
Right.
are you giving these, she wouldn't have gone to school
Right.
if she didn't have Franklin. If it would have been at Edward Little in a separate building and a separate entrance, I don't think she would have gone.
Right.
Because, and the kids that are going, if we're talking about kids that are bullied, they're not going to go because the kids that they have to face that are bullying them are in the same parking lot. So I worry
Those are the
about,
things we would have to discuss, and I think those are good questions to ask when we're visiting.
yeah.
Excellent questions.
So those for me are some of the major concerns. I like the idea of having the opportunity for the kids to be close so that they can utilize things if they would like to. But I'm just not sure if it outweighs.
Right. It's a lot to think about.
So
Absolutely.
the question is to move or not to move for the space.
Correct.
No, right?
Yes.
So the space is important because if we don't allocate the space and we decide, oh, God, this building down here is decrepit, it's going. The boiler goes, the roof leaks, whatever, at Franklin. It's happening now.
I was going to say not to worry. No, but you couldn't in 5 years have a different vision and say, I think we would come.
Right.
So a lot of what you're speaking about, yeah,
But we need the space in order to think.
correct.
We need the space to think.
In
the
order to
future.
vision and work through the plans, yes.
It's now or never.
Correct.
Right.
So if you choose never, then it's never.
Correct.
And we lose the space.
Correct.
Can you include the space and then not take the space?
The state is taking that what you decide you're going to do. That's my answer.
All right, I think you can move on.
So new high school project updates, just to give you kind of a quick synopsis of where we are. As you know, we have our survey results. We had over 300 responses to the survey around those items. Last night at subcommittee, we looked at the survey results, and we also looked at the community forum results. So that subcommittee work will be going to the building committee meeting next Tuesday, where the subcommittee has narrowed down option 1, option 2, option 3 for the building committee to consider. The building committee will make a recommendation to the school committee about which items should be included. As you know, Harriman can't include them until it comes before you all in the project. So if we want certain things, we need to tell them, for example, the 1,200 seat auditorium. There's a big difference in them designing a building with 800 seats than with 1,200 seats. Where does it go? So we have to have some direction for Harriman around what is going in that design to be rolled out on January 23rd. So that building committee meeting will be a big one to decide what's going to move forward. So you'll probably get more information at your December 19th meeting about what those items are. And then January 23rd is the date for the next public forum, which is really an informational about what is going to be included, what will the state, we're hoping to have a state number by then. We're hoping to have a local dollar impact as well. Part of the building committee meeting agenda next week will include discussion around impact on those local dollars. So there's a lot of parts moving. But I just wanted you to be in the loop of what's happening. So we will be at the building committee on December 11th. I am speaking to City Council on the 17th, and you'll be updated on the 19th. So I'm becoming a regular agenda item for City Council to help support them, to keep them in the loop.
So do we have when are you going to the state? After the December 11th?
Yes, we're going the Friday after December 11th. So they'll know what is coming from the building committee. So anything I missed or should have said? Okay, thank you. All right. Next agenda item, space needs discussion. So the reason this is on the agenda is this is the time of year that Adam, Billy, and I start talking about capital improvement. Also coming out of finance committee meetings has been discussion on capital improvement plans, and so looking at space needs discussion. So I'm going to give you, obviously, we have space needs. You know, that's typical of a district, is you're always looking at how you're using spaces. So I'm highlighting here some of the space needs, and then I'm going to go into a high need that we would like addressed sooner than later. But just a reminder to folks, Washburn School and East Auburn Community School use a multi-purpose space for their cafeteria, gym, and assemblies. On the left is East Auburn's community, the multi-purpose space. And then Washburn School has 2 portables for art and music classes. So you can see there's the portable. I think when Washburn first, before they got their addition, they had those portables for classrooms. And then when their addition was added, they kept the portables there for specialists. East Auburn Community School does not have art and music classrooms. We are working this summer to help upgrade their basement space, similar to Walton having a basement space for their specialists. We're working with the state on fire codes and so forth to make that space so that they have a classroom down there. So we're recognizing that, and that's part of the review that Adam Hansen and Billy Hunter do throughout their time putting the capital improvement plan. Other spaces, just to make you aware, and I could have probably made a list. I didn't go to every school and make the list, but I'm sure they're out there saying, well, she didn't say this. You're right, I didn't cover all of it. I'm just highlighting. But Fairview School administrators are sharing an office space right now. Fairview is using a special education classroom for a general education classroom. Auburn Middle School has a portable that houses a special education program, and obviously Edward Little High School has too many to name, and that's why we have a new high school. So what I'm going to focus on is Park Avenue Elementary School and the need for 2 additional classrooms. If you've been on the board for a long time, I won't point out who that may be. These classrooms have been talked about in our CIP program. So in our capital improvement program, these 2 classrooms are often there as future items. When the elementary school was built, it was built to have 2 additional classrooms, recognizing that enrollment was probably going up. Now, when it was built, we didn't have the resources in order to add them, and every year when we sit and talk about priorities, Vicki Gaylord asks for it and then says, I know it's probably a long shot, we'll just make it work, okay? So their enrollment since 2011, it was built for 350. I don't believe it's ever been 350, even when it opened its doors. So it has a history of being over enrollment for what it was built. The staff there, the leadership there have done everything to make it work. As you know, you added a teacher, another classroom teacher at Park Avenue last year, and they made it work. Lila Mitchell has continued to work on those class sizes as recently as about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, had to rearrange the 5th and 6th grade again and do a multi 5, 6 in order to reduce 5th grade class sizes. So it's an ongoing discussion with staff and families around how to best service students in that school. So currently they're using 2 meeting spaces for special education programming. So on the right is a special ed classroom, which by the way, right there, and you'll see it in the next slide, is a regular ed classroom. And on the left is the meeting area space. There's a meeting space that they've made a special ed classroom. They're using 2 special education spaces for general education programming. So on the left is a special ed space. So remember, just like we're doing space allocation for the Edward Little High School when they did Park Avenue class space allocation, that space is smaller because it was designed for specialized instruction, and the other one is designed for general instruction, and we're now using it for general instruction. Where will the 2 classrooms be built? If you're on the 2nd floor looking through the windows, there is the roof. And then on the picture of the school, you can see where the 2nd floor ends. It would continue across.
And all the superstructure underneath that is ready to support a 2nd story.
Correct.
That's the way it was originally designed.
Yes. Yeah.
So is that a hook, not a hook and ladder, but what is that? Is that an arm of a?
That's an arrow pointing where the classrooms are going.
Okay.
I thought
it looks like an arm up there. It's an arrow. Okay.
That was the crane. That was the crane
I was
bringing
so,
in the
I was so proud that I actually got an arrow in.
Right. Right.
I tell you, that was a stretch for me, and I somewhat pulled it off. Okay. So we have a small, as we discuss this, only about a month or 2 months of really talking about this being done. We have a short window to construct this summer. So things that we have done just to see, is this even a possibility? And why aren't we doing other projects? So we met with Stephen Blatt, who's the original architect for this project. And he has it already designed. So we already have the designs, and it was already built to add the 2 classrooms. As you said, Tom, it's ready to go. So we don't have to do a lot of the pre-work on that roof and how to support that. It's already there. The way that they designed it very well is they gave an opening to it. So there's the stairs that go up to that area that we can keep the students away from the construction area, because it's at the end of a wing, and there's exits and entrances there. We talked about the 2 kindergarten classrooms are underneath it. There can be no classrooms going on during the construction. So working with Lila to make sure how are we going to do a short-term solution to that to open the school year. So if we were to move forward and start immediately in June, there'll be a crane up, the school would be closed, the playground would be closed for the summer as we get all the construction started up and push to get as much work as we can get done. Those 2 classrooms would be relocated, and then he's thinking September, October, probably part of November to finish it off. And then they would move in. So there's things that if we want to start in June, we have to move to make sure you give approval for it. We have to get a builder and contractor, and Stephen Blatt would oversee the project. So tonight we're having a discussion about it. The finance committee, the next finance committee, Adam is going to be reviewing the capital improvement projects and plans. What have we done over the last 5 years? What were we supposed to do this summer? What can be maybe delayed? So there's a lot of discussion at the finance committee whether we have the resources to do the 2 classrooms. The finance committee will talk before your December 19th meeting as to how this would be funded, how will the plans be done, and that's going to be, I think your finance meeting is what date? 17th, right. So then on school committee, we would ask you to approve us to go into a contract with Stephen Blatt in order to organize the project. He's very conscientious to make sure that, what can we do to mitigate costs? He was saying you could use the kindergarten classrooms when they're empty as a workroom rather than they rent a trailer. You don't need that. So he was really brainstorming how can we best do this in a cost-effective way. With the other projects like Washburn, East Auburn, Fairview, that would cost a lot more when you talk about an architect, drawings, prepping the site, doing all the work that you would need to construct an addition. This is ready to go. We'll have more pricing at the finance committee meeting and on December 19th.
Katie, is there a bubble of students? Is it higher and a bubble and lower? You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Is there a bubble?
Do you mean like enrollment?
Yes.
Yeah, their enrollment, they were built to have 2 classrooms per grade.
Okay.
Right? They don't have that. They have like you said, some grades they can manage with 2 teachers, other grades they can manage with 3 teachers. So they have to manage with 3 teachers. So yes, as you look at their history of enrollment, the number of teachers they have that is causing this, they need long-term.
So not the number of teachers, the number of students. Is the enrollment on a bubble factor? Is it bubbling and then it's going to go back down to a normal thing? Do we see a bubble in enrollment?
Well, it's never been its normal place. So the enrollment will stay on average. I think I put out 3 years of still going out. They're going to range from, I'll go back here. Whoops. So as you've seen where they've been, their lowest was 367, and their highest has been at 391. They're currently at 383. So they have shown that they're, I would say, between a 375 and the 383. It all depends on their kindergarten numbers and coming through. So they have high classes, and then they have a little bit lower classes. So their class sizes range from high to low. So looking at the history, they were never built for what they have. They should have probably had the 2 classrooms from the beginning.
So is there a rotating loan that's going to be up at the state level, what do we call it, Tom?
A revolving loan.
Revolving loan.
They will, but whether that will be in time to do that. And also, they've added safety into the revolving loan option. So I think there's going to be a lot of needs that other districts will look at for that. If it comes about and that's something we want to discuss, we can, but it won't be available in this window.
Bonnie, I think we'll look forward to your finance committee.
Yeah, your finance, you're going to be looking at what are
all
your
that.
CIP dollars available from your past years. And so you're going to be looking at all your different resources.
And I think it's important to know if there's a revolving loan coming up.
Not that we know of. I mean,
Can
all
we
we've
find
heard is
out?
some talk of it.
Yeah,
but
there's been talk.
I can't imagine it would be in time to accomplish it on this timeline, if there is anything.
So your finance committee, you're going to discuss it. I wanted to bring it forward to you that this is a high need. Okay. But finance committee is going to be talking a lot about it at their next meeting, and then we'll come to you on the 19th whether we're going to go forward or not go forward. But I wanted to make you aware that we're having discussions about it.
I would request a little bit of additional information,
Sure.
and that would be for the next time, so we can consider that. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a number there, but it's just one whole number. I would like to see like the grade, at each grade level, how many you have enrolled in each grade level.
I have that. We're going to have to
Right
go in
there.
I do have it.
Yes, so that would be kind of helpful.
I'll send that to you and I'll show it at the next meeting. Yes,
Yeah.
I do have it.
Because usually CIP projects are like 2 years down the road. This is like
Right.
just a few months away.
Yeah, right.
So,
It can go on our CIP, if need be, it can go on our CIP for this 2020.
Yeah, it's on
It doesn't
the
have to wait 2
CIP
years.
list.
yeah, 19,
Right, it's
19
been on.
and 20.
And I know that the council, I watched the council the other night, and I know that CIP was very much in your news the other night, but this has been, unlike some of the things you talked about, this has been on our CIP
yeah.
list.
Right.
on it,
Every year.
And it keeps being pushed away
Okay.
on
Yeah.
it, so it has been on our CIP
Yeah,
list.
and I do remember when this was built, you know, the
Yes.
idea was to add on to that because at the time, it just went to a certain degree of money.
Exactly.
But you're going to continue to have increased enrollments there. I mean, we know that.
I mean, they all work really closely together. So a lot of East Auburn has a certain line, and I know when she's looking at her enrollment, some students go to Park Avenue that can't go to East Auburn, do their enrollment, similar to Washburn. So that whole district community shares and talks about how to support each other in enrollments. Same with Fairview. I mean, that whole group really talks a lot. As Tom Ken and I talked, you don't want to open a huge can, which is you probably should redistrict. So we know that would be, yeah. But we're doing the best we can. Transportation, today, we had a discussion on a new enrollment at East Auburn that's going to attend Washburn School because of their numbers. So it happens all the time, and Park Avenue is helping other schools
Yes, they
as
are.
well. So,
But we need to be careful of Fairview, too, because
Yep.
of the 36
Exactly.
apartments that are workforce development.
right. We may have to put some enrollment at Park Avenue. I mean, that would help
Redistrict.
balancing that area. So when I call Sheila, I say, how close are you going to Park there? Can you swing in? Lila would say that, right, Lila? Yeah. How close can we get to this school and this school? And Sheila and Billy work hard to work magic around where our buses go, to mitigate, to lessen the route, but get kids where they need to go so that we can help class sizes. So.
It might also be helpful to look down the road for other schools and where we're headed.
Absolutely.
And I think if we kind of have a timeline for that, because we wouldn't want that all at one fell swoop, because we'd be able to handle it.
Yeah, Washburn School's addition's been on the capital improvement plan, because when it was built, its addition was built, it was also built for another addition. And then East Auburn, that is one, you have to decide whether you're going to invest, So, yeah, these are all important, all important.
Thank you.
Katie, are you still meeting with the planning department so that you know where their workforce housing is going to be and where their other housing is going to be? Okay.
Yes, I watched the minutes. I couldn't attend the last pre-meeting, but, yeah. There are
Keeping
3
their face.
apartments going in right now.
Yeah.
How many?
There's 3
Buildings,
apartments. Yeah.
3 buildings.
Yeah.
Okay, the last item is the Vision 2030, and I have a link there. Oh, maybe I can push it from here.
Thank you.
Michelle has a hard copy.
36. 1 and 2 bedrooms.
I can see it.
Workforce development. What'd you say they call it?
So you can see it looks quite different. And I can't pull it up on my screen because we have a technical problem.
Cut and pasted into Safari.
What?
Copy
I can't
and
even
paste
get,
it.
I can't even get out of my computer right
You
now.
can't?
No. So what we've done with the Vision 2020 is I took everyone's feedback and put it all out on my desk. Scott Neer was in my office at the time, had just finished a meeting, and I said, can you come over here and sit next to me? And we went through the comments, and then we went section by section to make it what everyone wanted, which is, could you make it shorter? Could you make it clearer? And could you make it so everyone understands it and can own it? So that's what we did. We did a first draft, and then Adam Hansen and I went through it one more time. And then it went to administrators to say, is this what you heard in your schools? Is this, can you give a thumbs up? And everybody was like, this is really excellent. That we listened, we consolidated, and we tried to make it what everybody, there it is. Thank you. So you can see, now, you all wanted in a world yet imagined, okay? But we did a survey and we asked different stakeholders which one they would want. So 60% or more wanted ever-changing world. About 24% wanted yet imagined, and 24% or so wanted the other choice, which I can't even remember. But I said to administrators, the school committee wanted a world yet imagined. So I put where most people wanted, which was an ever-changing world. But if you all would like a world yet imagined, I can put it there. I'm just telling you, when I asked, it was ever-changing world.
That's for our input.
I did hear your input, and I did acknowledge it, did I not? Yes, I acknowledged that the school committee did not wanted the world yet imagined. Pat?
This is a vision for the whole community, not just the school committee.
Correct. Right. Yep. So you can see that there used to be a sentence above each of the stakeholders. That was removed, because what we made sure is what was ever in that went into the bullets. So really trying to make sure everything was accounted for. And so here it is. So I'm having discussion tonight for approval next meeting. Any questions, any comments?
I like it.
Yep, me too. I think it looks good.
Thank you.
It incorporated a lot of people's thoughts and wordsmithing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we would say to each other, what do we mean when we say that? That's jargon again. What do we mean when we say that? When we mean this, okay, then we need to say that.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
But you kept the kernel of what we had done the first time.
Correct.
When we wrote the initial one.
Yes.
I think
Exactly.
it's very good.
I like it. Good.
Good. All right. That's it for my items.
Good deal.
Next one is Adams.
Business. Adam, you're on.
So I have two items for you, and this is some housekeeping. Our district is part of the MSMA Insurance Trust and the MSMA Dental Insurance Trust. And a few years back, the boards of those trusts revised their documents, and they need a certain number of school districts to also adopt those amendments. And so we need to do our part and adopt the changes to their documents so that the trust can keep going and in compliance with everything they need to do. And Auburn can continue our membership
Can you
with the
explain
trust.
the trust and our participation in that?
Sure. So we're able to offer life insurance to our employees and also dental insurance to our employees through the trust, and is at no cost to the district, but we're able to pass that along to the employees. So basically, by being a member, it allows us to do that.
Hello, where's Pinky?
Are there any questions on this? Because it's really just housekeeping to allow us to continue to offer these two benefits through the school for our employees, and we've got to accept them because that's what their board accepted. And a district, in order to be a member, needs to accept them as well. So I think they're fairly straightforward. It's no change in our current processes and
Right.
things.
No
So
change.
it's just
Anything that
maintains
we're
what we've been doing right along.
Right.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
I move we authorize the amendments to the MSMA group insurance.
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor? Thank you. And you need a second motion on for the dental, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so a motion to approve.
I also move that we authorize amendments to the dental from MSMA.
Second?
Second.
All those in favor? Moves us through those. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, the next, yeah.
Is Michelle up next?
Yes.
Poor Michelle.
Okay. So I think the air conditioning's on tonight. What do you think?
I think it is too.
So we have two policies for first reading tonight and procedures and a piece of evidence for our policy manual. So first we'll start with the policy IKFC, which is the graduation requirements. We went over this policy at our workshop in October, I believe it was. And this is the same policy that you saw during that night and during that discussion. Any questions? I don't want to belabor
Any
it.
questions?
I have just one question, and I probably overlooked it the last time, but it's having to do with the 6 credits for the other, the learning experiences. Who will assign those credits, or how will that be selected in terms of assignment of credits so that it equals 6 credits? How do we know? Is there a list somewhere?
Additional. So those are the electives, basically.
They're the, oh, I know the electives, but
That's what
you're
those
talking
are.
about the learning experience, additional learning experiences.
Those are the electives.
Those
And
are the
those are,
We used to call them electives.
oh,
Right,
okay.
it's a
Gotcha.
different name.
Yeah.
Okay.
Same thing,
Same
different
Okay.
name.
different name.
Translation.
Thank you.
Translation.
Question answered. Thank you.
Very good.
Ever-changing world, that's right.
Yeah, ever-changing.
Very good, Michelle.
Ever-changing is better
right.
than world yet
That's what I
imagined.
picked.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Do you want to present both of these in the restraints, so both policies, and we'll vote on both
Sure.
of them?
We can do that. And the second policy tonight is JKAA, and that's the use of physical restraint and seclusion. This policy was in need of update because of changes in the law to bring up to current expectations and practices there.
Questions?
I have a couple.
Yes.
I'll try to be really quick. On one page, it says PRN, that was not defined, and it was never mentioned before. And it was on a page that had to do with, oh, God, I didn't write the name of the page down. Maybe 1 of 6, page 1 of 6, perhaps.
That's the procedure.
That's the procedure.
We're going to talk about that in just a minute.
Right.
This is
But-
the policy.
So can we just spell out the word that goes with, like you did the other two?
Oh, you want PRN? Is that what you
Yes,
want?
right,
I
PR.
don't know what, that's usually, I've got to look and see.
So people are clear when they read that, they know what PRN means.
Right. Maybe it'd be, if it's not in the policy, maybe it'd be better if we talked about it.
Yeah,
when we
I've
get
got
to the
I
procedure.
will see you, there's a bunch of things that I was
Okay.
going to ask you questions on.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Further questions? Entertain a motion to approve the 2 policies as presented.
So moved.
Second? Dan seconds. All those in favor? That's our first reading. These will come before us at our second reading.
Yes. So,
Procedures.
okay. Up next, we have procedure that goes along with JKAR. That's the procedures on the physical restraint and seclusion. And then we have an evidence. So again, this is to update and align with the policy, those things that we changed in the policy that needed to be addressed in the procedure. PRN. Did you see where it was?
I'm going to have to look at it. Well, I don't have it in front, do I?
Okay. Usually, and I want to make sure before I say
looked
it,
at it
usually that's in case of a medication, and that it's given when it's needed. It's not a prescribed, taken every day, but PRN is as needed. I don't know what the medical reference is. I don't know if anybody over there knows what it is.
It just means as needed. I don't know. What does the P and R and the N stand for?
Shoot.
I'll Google it.
Let me Google it.
It's Latin, we're hearing.
It's Latin?
It's as needed.
As needed.
That's the
As
medical
needed.
term.
As needed.
Ibuprofen, 600 milligrams every 6 hours, PRN.
It's Latin.
It's Latin for as needed.
It's Latin and it stands for pro re nata. Latin phrase
Jenna.
for as needed.
Well,
There's
you were
our medical
modeling-
professional.
That's what we need.
Thank you.
You were modeling collaborative learning right
I give
there.
all
Very
of my
nicely
meds
done.
PRN.
Very nicely done.
Maybe that's your problem.
So I will, I will attempt to bring us back. So the policy, and then the final piece is JKAE, and that's just a piece of evidence on the form that we have teachers fill out in the case of, or staff fill out, in the case of the need for the use of restraint or seclusion.
Any questions?
Only one. The 7 days, is that as per the state regulations, or is it just, I mean, I thought 7 days of
I guess, yes.
notification for written
Not here.
documentation to parents. I thought that if you have a perpetual offender, 7 days, you know, down the road for written documentation is kind of a long time if you're accumulating every single day and you're having issues. So I think it would be more manageable if it were closer. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, so again, this was to bring it in line with what the state
It is.
regulation
It
expectations.
says 7 days.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a typical timeline for written notices to be provided. We are certainly communicating with our parents in the same day, but the written
Yeah.
notice goes.
Any further
But you're right.
discussion? Entertain a motion to approve the two procedures as presented? Second?
Second. Oh,
All those in favor? Very good. The next item on the committee is, on the agenda is in error. We will not be discussing the school calendar
I
this
thought,
evening.
I didn't think that was on there.
Somehow it slipped in when we were editing.
Yeah, something,
Cut and paste.
something happened.
That's right. Committee information. Finance
This
Committee.
is Pat's moment.
Oh. That-
She's not excited anymore.
Whoa, really?
Can-
No, I'm not, I'm kind of tired, but I have this whole page here.
So is Bob.
That's all right, I'm going to bed. I attended the first, well, it was actually the second meeting of the Curriculum Instruction and Assessment Committee, which is, has the acronym CIA, which is really kind of cool. And so I wanted to report out because I think it's a significant endeavor that our teachers are participating in, and it reflects the important work that they're doing in the classroom all the time. The role of the committee is to meet monthly with representatives from teachers, administrators, and OLT staff to support and guide curriculum instruction and assessment issues across the grade levels. And they will be effective communication that will go back and forth between OLT and the individual teachers and schools. The teachers currently from each elementary grade level are going to meet with Shelley twice throughout the rest of the school year, and this is K through 6, to determine the most important standards or targets in their grade level so they can identify them and they can be integrated into the major content areas. The process is starting this coming Wednesday with the kindergarten representatives. They will be meeting from 11 to 3 at Auburn Hall with coverage provided by the pre-K teachers and ed techs.
8, 9, 9.
And Shelley is looking for grade level
My
volunteers and
fiance
has
till they
asked the
get
principals to
arrested.
recruit teachers. Following up what Sue Doris and Kim and Zoanne reported on was a lot of discussion about the January and March workshops and utilizing that time for teachers to discuss test results. And because, as well demonstrated this evening, the MEA tests are more rigorous than what our students are used to and what they're working on in the classrooms. And so when you talk about data and, you know, impacting instruction or driving instruction, then I think that's telling us quite blatantly that we need to intentionally put more rigor in our classrooms. And so in January, they want to look at the test results more deeply. And then in March, Shelley would like to run some mini programs, mini workshop kind of programs for teachers to rotate through and see what other teachers are doing, and also to have people come in from outside the district to give us some help with this. 2 other short items. The DOE has revised the science and social studies standards and is taking comments from educators. And next up, they're going to be doing ELA and math, so that's going to have quite an impact on us. And last, Nate Terrio presented information on the C3 National Framework for Teaching Social Studies that organizes content around important thinking skills. One more time, we're talking about rigor, increasing rigor in the classrooms. This framework relates well to the Maine learning results and is going to be used in the elementary curriculum work. So I spoke really fast and a lot of stuff is in there, but I think what this committee is doing is going to help move us forward as a school district.
Excellent. Nice report, Pat.
Nice report.
Did I get it? Did I get a A?
Get an A.
A plus.
4.
A plus.
You get a 4 in the ever-changing world.
Okay.
Right on that.
Trying to be good. It's hard. Okay, let's go to City Council. Alfreda, you have some school committee information from the...
Yes, I have some, but in interest
Alfreda,
of...
just warning you, Bob's getting wiggly.
Yeah, what's that?
Bob's getting wiggly.
No, I was just saying, in the interest of time, I'm going to skip a lot of the stuff I was going to say, but, well, one thing that you may be, want to take into account, we did have Amanda Rector, who came from the Maine State, she's an economist, and she gave us a lot of statistics in terms of what it looks like right now, and I probably put it together and sent it to everybody, but one of the things that is of concern to us is that the highest income earners in Maine now are living in Florida. So, I mean, as we look at, you know, what the cost factors are, so we might want to be considering that as we talk about that. Marijuana moratorium is important to discuss. February 5th, there's a work group to finish the ordinance. February 18th, they'll be presenting it to City Council. And March 4th, there'll be a public forum. So I think we need to, you know about that. Streets having to do with transportation, you know, there have been 8 projects that have gone on. That's all I'm going to say about that. And we also, I listened to a really good presentation by the Androscoggin Land Trust, the City of Auburn, the Cooperative Extension Service, and St. Mary's Nutrition Center, having to do with a third garden that they're going to request being put in the Washburn area. And it does involve the school, and they're very appreciative of the fact that they could be using that. And what I did is I spoke with them, and I heard them talking about the need for a place for seedlings. And I did mention the East Auburn School and the greenhouse there. Yeah. And they were very excited about that. And then, of course, we've talked about that before. So there's supposed to be some connection with you. Someone's going to be connecting with you if they haven't already done so. So, you know, as you know, I'm on that committee for agriculture. So I'm really looking to keep supporting that down the road. And I hope that the schools will play more of a major role in that. And can we weave that in, as we said, having to do with agriculture. And one thing that doesn't have anything to do with school, that if you own property on Taylor Pond, you probably know by now that they're going to be reassessing the properties because they're selling for much higher than they're assessed at. So that's going to happen within the next 2 years. So I don't have to worry about that. I'm not on Taylor Pond. It's too late now. So thank you very much.
Very good. Pat, do you have anything else on either CLC or Share Center?
Yes, I attended the CLC meeting yesterday, but I'm going to report out. I'm going to meet personally with her and get some more information. I did go to the Share Center meeting last night also. That was a lengthy meeting. I'm not going to reiterate everything that we did, but they've had a huge donation of things from Liberty Mutual, rolling whiteboards and cafeteria tables and on and on and on, and it's going to continue as Liberty Mutual downsizes. So that's a significant amount of things that is coming through. Lisa is, as you all know, looking for more space. There are lots of irons in the fire for that. They're hoping to also participate in Clean Sweep, which is the June 9th, where they sell all of the things the Bates kids leave behind, and they usually make about $5,000 with that. It's a lot of work, and that's coming up. They're gearing up for that. This is significant for Auburn at some point, maybe. Membership dues are going to be increased for next year. Currently, they're charging $1.79 per student, and next year it's going to be $2. And that schools will be notified as time goes on. And anyone with new fundraising ideas, anybody that can write grants, get in touch with Lisa Rodriguez at Share Center. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you much. Let's see. We report on policies, and negotiations haven't begun again. The building committee meets next week, and I think we're done. Upcoming meetings, we have our meeting on the 19th, then we will excuse ourselves for the rest of December and reconvene in January.
Oh, that's a nice Christmas present.
That's right. Only do it once. No need for an executive session, so I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
So
Second?
Second,
Yes.
gladly.
Numbers that you gotta give for the state to get your space. It's not the same way we did for the Park Avenue School, was it? Because you're telling me that the Park Avenue School was too small from day one. There was more students.
It was
built for 350, and it wouldn't, and there was more than 350 the first day.
Correct. You
Are
have
we
to.
going by the same standards to trying to find out how big
Yeah.
we're going to build this school for our high school, and end up in the same boat 5, 6, 7 years later?
We did.
Part of the requirement, it's a really good question, because they base our 1180 on a report. There was a report done on our enrollment. We're required to show how we would expand if there was a need. So just like Park Avenue, we had to show if there was a need, where would you expand? We have to do the exact same thing to plan.
So it failed with Park Avenue, so I don't know, so we did the same thing, so we should have learned from Park Avenue not
But
to
we
do the same
projected
thing.
10 years, right?
No, it's not our failure, it was whoever projected's failure, but,
Correct.
right.
Well,
But,
that's why I asked, we used the
yeah,
same
the
projection.
exactly. The DOE, they tell you
for-
the number.
Yeah.
The DOE
And
does.
when she asked, so we should maybe project more than what we're looking for, so we're not stuck again with a building that's too small. And like Patricia said, maybe allocate for this Franklin school in there, but make it so it can be used for something else if Franklin doesn't end up going there, because it seems like there's always a need and there's always more and more kids coming. And also with the architects, there should be maybe a way to expand the school easily. So, all right, we outgrew it fast, so, all right, we built it so we can attach right here and keep on going, not, oh, no, we
Correct.
gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
So that should be built in with the as well with the architecture.
Yeah.
So we can expand the building, and it's not, what do we do next?
The Department of Education
Food for thought.
Right, the Department of Education tells us the number. So they'll tell us what they're willing to pay for in the number. That's where the,
the
that's where the
students.
negotiations is.
Right.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to food for thought.
Good thoughts.
Thank you.
Very good.
Motion to adjourn? A second? All those in favor?
Second.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alfreda, for the card.
Yes, thank you.
Very nice.